It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott's here. Richard Campbell's here. Paul says it's not you, it's Windows. Some of the massive flaws in Windows these days. Paul says, what is it? Kids writing this stuff? Interns? We'll also talk about show season and the Microsoft Surface event coming up in a couple of weeks. And then Windows 11 Insider builds, Xbox news, and Paul has a great tip for backing up and reinstalling your Windows machine. Stay tuned. It's all coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. Episode 844, recorded Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. Friday Sweets. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by ACI Learning. Keep your team's IT skills current. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit. Twit listeners will receive at least 20% off or as much as 65% off an IT Pro Enterprise Solution plan. The discount is based on the size of your team, and when you fill out the form, you'll get a proper quote tailored to your needs. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft. Paul Thurrott is here. Well, he's in Macungie, which is almost here. Thurrott.com.
Closer than Richard.
Yes. Richard Campbell of runasradio.com is in Copenhagen. Wonderful, wonderful Copenhagen. Are you visiting the little lady?
I was going to say the only thing anyone knows about Copenhagen, the one statue of the is it a mermaid or a little girl?
The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Little
Mermaid. Yeah. No, I'm a fan of Victor Borge, right?
Me
like that. You want to talk about Denmark.
Something's rotten in Denmark and it's you, buddy.
His audio punctuation bit is one of the funniest things you've ever seen.
Funniest thing. I love the bit. Whenever someone would arrive late to one of his presentations, he'd stop, right, and he would mock them as they were coming in and make this foot sounds. And they finally said, he goes, "Ma'am, where are you from?" She goes, "California." He says, "I'm from Copenhagen. I got here before you."
Nice.
Very good. Very good.
That's
well,
good.
Welcome to you both. What are you doing in Copenhagen? By the way, Tivoli Gardens. That's what I know about Copenhagen.
Yeah, right next door from where we are.
Perfect
right
time of year, too. Oh, you'll have fun.
We are here for the Copenhagen Developers Festival. And we've been recording some .NET Rocks episodes, and I did my current generation space presentation, so sort of state of space in 2023. All fun stuff. Like, it's really an enjoyable show.
Nice. Well, good to have you. Great to have you.
Yeah, good to be here.
And our theme today is, it's not you, it's Windows.
There's also a sub-theme. I bet you never heard of the thing I'm talking about.
Oh,
and I'll mention when that comes up. There should be at least two of them.
Okay.
All right.
Now I feel like I'm challenged, like I should know. All right. What is up? You lead this off, Paul, with the words, "I think it's time we addressed a painful reality."
Right. As all of you know, I tend to be very positive and not negative in any way. And so this is going to be like a sharp right turn in some ways.
Shocker.
No, actually, this is a set of issues I've kind of ignored, and which is dumb. And actually, to kind of frame this, I will tell a story because we all kind of tend to blame ourselves when things go wrong, right, with the computer, right? You wonder, is it something I did? Maybe it's me. And in the late 1980s, up until the late 1980s, maybe the early 1990s, there was a store in the Boston area called Bradley's, which was sort of like the Walmart of the area of the day. And so this would have been 89, somewhere in that time frame, 1989. I'm standing in line paying for something at Bradley's, and the woman is tapping her fingernails on the register thing, and she looks at me and she says, "I'm sorry about this is taking so long." She says, "Computers." And I said, "I do know computers." And
I happen to be an expert.
I don't think that excuses it. Like we just sort of accept that things go wrong, right? It's very common. So if you're using Windows 11, what I'm about to say, this is not one of those things you may not have experienced. You've experienced it. You absolutely have. Now I'm waiting for people in the comments. So I've never seen this, but you have. If you're using Windows 11, you have. And that's this. You're doing something, doesn't matter what it is. You're working on some app, some window, whatever. And all of a sudden, File Explorer just jumps to the front, right? File Explorer seizes the focus. This is a bug in Windows 11. It's been there for several months. People complain about it in forums and whatever, and no one seems to know anything about it or can do anything about it and whatever. Now, one you might not have experienced or might not have seen, but this also Windows 11 bug, is you're working on whatever, same thing, but all of a sudden, all of the icons in your desktop shift to that blank white piece of paper looking icon that doesn't mean anything. And if you right click on the desktop and refresh, it'll go back to normal. The first time I saw that, I had been having a series of problems with that particular computer. And I said, I'm going to hum this thing right through the window. I can't do this anymore. But before I did that, I right clicked on the desktop. It was fine. I looked it up, talked to Raphael. He's like, yep, this is happening. All kinds of people. It's also about to get worse because Windows 11 23H2 is coming out in a few months. And it includes, I'm going to call it a new version of File Explorer. It's actually the same File Explorer, but they've done some deep changes to it with regards to the user experience. This thing is a performance dog and is one of the buggiest things I've ever used in my life.
But you don't think they've addressed the existing bug, just introduced new ones?
Yeah, that's how I think this team works, actually. Yes, I will confirm. That is my opinion. So here's the problem. Well, I don't know the problem, but I don't actually know what the problem is. But what they've done is they couldn't get XAML islands to work correctly, which is how they did part of the UI in File Explorer for Windows 11. Right. So they they switched over to the Windows App SDK. They also couldn't get that to work. So with both of these technologies, they've created a custom version of it just for that one app that they're not giving to the public and aren't explaining what the problems are. And it is buggier than hell. I'm using this on 3 different computers now. All of them have blue screened. All of them, routinely Explorer crashes, the screen blanks. All of your, open windows closed. If you have any Explorer windows open, it's terrible. Related to this, I will just say, anyone who's paid attention to Windows over the years will know that Microsoft has at different times talked about improving the performance of file copy through File Explorer, right? Steven Sinofsky was big on this. I think this was a Windows 8 thing, right? It was one of those desktop features that was a big improvement for the day, but it was kind of lost because of all of the, touch first nonsense that everyone hated so much. But it was a big improvement. Because I've been having problems with File Explorer, I've started testing third-party file managers, which I don't typically care about. And there's a thing that called Directory Opus, which actually has been around, I think, since the late 1980s. I used to use it on the Amiga, so it's been around a while, or some version of it has. It's an ugly app. It's a desktop app.
It's an old app.
It's an old app. And I'll tell you something, and it doesn't matter if it's the beta version of the File Explorer that I've been talking about that was a problem, or RTM version, which is what's happening on this computer. This thing transfers files somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 times the speed of File Explorer. And that's true whether you're going over the network or from disk to disk.
Wow.
And I'd like to understand, and this is a rhetorical question, why a third-party file manager that, frankly, is one of the ugliest things I've ever seen in my life can somehow work better than the beautiful but nonsense thing that Microsoft builds into Windows 11. It doesn't make sense to me.
Because it shouldn't be a product, right? Like the fastest client for transferring files should be the thing built into Windows.
Yep.
Like how could it be anything else?
Why is it anything else? So one of the one of the many goofy things about File Explorer is that they keep screwing with it, right? As we talk about the soon-to-be 3 different versions of Windows 11, one of the fascinating things about this product to me is that the initial version that shipped in the first version of Windows 11 of File Explorer was different from what was in Windows 10. They made it different again in 22H2, and they're making it different again in 23H2. And to me, the problems they're solving are not issues. There's a gallery view.
The problem, like there isn't even a problem there. The old File Explorer worked fine.
I know. I don't understand why they're. I don't understand this stuff. I mean, some of it. Look, I don't care about the homepage. If they want to surface favorite files and recently accessed files, that's cool. As long as we can configure that. I don't really use it, but I don't care. It's fine. But they're making it, like, for example, one of the big changes is there's a new gallery view, and this is a photo gallery view that's built into the navigation pane as a standalone node between Home and OneDrive.
Awesome.
I don't want it there. And I'm guessing that there will be, if there isn't already, a way to remove this thing from File Explorer, but it is the most superfluous waste of time I've ever seen. There's also this sense of, when we were going to Windows 8, like one of the things we had to do was make sure all the buttons could be hit with thumbs so everything got bigger. And It was comical in Windows 8. If you ever looked at like an app bar at the bottom of a full screen app, there was big, stupid looking buttons. It was really nonsensical for a desktop app use. But the user interface elements in this version of File Explorer are, I don't know, 27% bigger. It's some weird scaling thing. It looks like it's been retroactively enlarged to make it better for touch, which is like, it's 2023. Nobody needs this.
No. And I think you're being charitable. It looks like it's been
stupid.
Tinkered with by children.
And I'm glad you said that, because yesterday the Windows Insider program had a little video chat. And you would think that the people working on this low-end system utility would be middle-aged, experienced developers with literal tool belts around their waist and whatever. Right. And no, it's a bunch of kids who were born since Windows 95 came to market. And and I'm not trying to be mean. I mean, like young people have great value too. I don't mean you have to be older and experienced to offer anything. I really don't mean that. But
you just say young people have great values. You really
no, I didn't say values. Young people can offer great value.
They can offer value. They can offer value.
That's right. They're often comical. They could be funny. They're a good example of what not to do. No, I don't mean it like that.
Do you pat him on the head too, Paul?
Yeah.
Is that what
it literally. It has that sort of. Well, this is a little sad because this isn't like the phone link app or some stupid thing. This is like the central file management utility in Windows.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there are adults working on it too, but that was a little alarming to me.
Paul, you're just getting old. This is what happens.
No.
When you get old, the cops all start looking young, and you go, young person.
I've experienced that. Yes, of course. As you get older, the people who play basketball for your professional sports team are now younger than you are.
Our quarterback in the Niners, Brock Purdy, looks like he's in 6th grade.
All right, listen, I can't prove this, but I would like to think that I almost said emotionally intelligent. I'm not going to say that I am a good enough person that if File Explorer in Windows 11 23H2 was awesome, and I saw those kids, I would think to myself, good for them. They did a great job, right? But that's not what I thought, because File Explorer in 23H2 is a piece of crap. So, sorry.
And to be clear, a slow piece of crap, right? Like it's not even...
And also, to be fair to myself, I wasn't going to bring up the age of these people. Richard just happened to mention children, and of course, I went right there.
But there's this interesting problem in the Windows space now where, you're either a 30-year veteran and you don't want to work on certain things, and nobody can make you, right? Like you've made enough from the stock now that you don't need a job. Yep. Unless you have 8 wives and a cocaine habit, you don't need to be there. How do they persuade you to do anything?
There are.
Then you have a younger generation that's just trying to be a part of a product, and I think they're up against it.
Yeah, I don't mean to generalize here. I don't mean to say that everyone who's an intern starts on Windows, because that's where we're at now. I don't mean it like that, but I do think a lot of the older, more experienced people who work in the Windows org, so to speak, are actually in the Azure org working on back end stuff. The guys who stick it out. Are the deep architectural guys.
Well, and I think that's sort of the dynamic is right. It's like they've made them uncomfortable enough that they've gone and jumped to another team. So like, who are the folks that are behind that are still there?
Right.
And what's motivating them?
I'm not saying it was bring your kid to work day or anything. I don't mean it like that. I'm just saying.
You can't say that.
I can't keep doing it. I'm sorry. I'm terrible. I just can't. But listen, this is not something I ever would have brought up. It's just that this product is terrible. This thing might ship in as little as 2 months. It's not ready. It's not even. It should not be a thing.
And it's super fixable. Just go back to the old version.
Yes. It's what File Explorer needs to be is a pure Win32 app with assembly language for the performance bits. Who cares what it looks like?
I think it needs that. This is not that hard.
It's awful.
Right? Like it shouldn't be bad. It's not.
I've been doing a lot of big file copy stuff lately, which is why I've been running into this problem. I've been doing that digital decluttering stuff. I've been
doing your giant photo realignment and moving those YouTube videos around. And by the way, I've been watching it all and loving it.
So I've made great progress. I never thought I would get as much done as I'm getting done, and I'm going to I don't mean finish, but I'm going to finish like the core archive bit of it. But it has required me to run wires around this apartment because you just can't. Because wires are faster. Or even plug in a hard drive, copy it locally, then copy it locally over here. Like, it's stupid, but this is the problem. Anyway, this has caused me to look into this stuff, and it's a problem. I'm not done. So there's a lot more than File Explorer.
I mean, not to pile on, but I'm in the midst of retiring my old file servers. I've been trying to copy stuff up into the Teams shares, and it has a nasty habit of just copying the file structure and telling me everything's fine.
Right.
It's like, hey, I have a bunch of empty folders. Thanks for that.
There's a whole, I mean, anyone who's done cross-disk, cross-network file copy knows that there's a real problem with what I'll just call it metadata for date created, date modified, whatever.
Take the ACLs with you, like any of those.
It's a huge problem. Yeah, huge problem. But I'm not going to call that a File Explorer problem. That's just been a long time issue.
Well, and you're hitting on the issue, which is like, how could you mess this up? Like, it's just, it's the most basic thing, and it already worked. What feature were you trying to add that you impaired the fundamentals?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is it possible it's just a bug that they're going to fix? I mean, you get regressions. You get, you have a program
many bugs.
Well, so the file copy performance is something I've experienced on the current version of Windows 11, not just the.
But this is historically a problem on Windows. That's why they put RoboCopy in the command line, right? Because
if only they could, I don't know, have a GUI front end of RoboCopy or Xcopy or whatever. I know. So, all right, as we're talking about things, you might have seen problems. You're like, oh, maybe it's me. People who upgraded to the latest monthly update, I believe it is for Windows 11, are getting unsupported processor blue screens all over the place. And which is, of course, it's impossible if you're a Microsoft guy these days not to immediately go down some weird conspiracy theory path, right? And Microsoft is obviously aware of it. They're investigating it. They're asking for people to file reports in the feedback hub. This is something I've experienced on one computer because I do have one, I always test this kind of scenario. And I got to be honest, that computer's basically unusable right now. So I don't know how people are even going to update, update this thing when whatever update comes out. But
they swore to us we needed at least Gen 8 and above, right? And we needed TPM v2.
That's right.
And then we found out none of it was true. So maybe they're now trying to make that true. Like, is it just older hardware that has the problem?
This is going to come up again. In fact, it might be the next. Yeah, it's the next topic. This comes up a lot. Microsoft does something really bad. People complain and they're like, guys, this is a mistake. We're going to fix it. You get the feeling that it was like, let's just see how it goes,
I mean, one way to fix it is to let your hardware age out and you'll buy new gear. In fact, wait for September 21st. We've got some announcements.
We're going to talk about this. So the other one that's like this, I've not seen this one myself, so that's kind of fun. But Tom Warren over at The Verge wrote about how Microsoft is using a new version of what we all call malware tactics to push people, usually to Edge. So you're using Chrome and you go to Bing.com or something. Well, why would you do that? I'm sorry. That's a ridiculous scenario. But you're using Edge and you go to the Chrome website or whatever it is. And you're like, hey, you should use our browser. Our browser is fun, They started testing that with Bing as well and trying to force people with Chrome on Windows 11, when they do a Google search, to go through Bing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yep. Now, Microsoft says this was unintended and they're going to fix that. It's only happened to some people. It's one, because that's the way software goes out nowadays. But let me ask you a question. Unintended, but you built the software that made this happen. This isn't a random collection of bits. Like you built something to do this. Yeah. People saw it, and now you're like, oh, we're just kidding. Yikes.
This was eminently testable by your team. Like none of these scenarios are that exotic.
Right. Now, to the people out there, this is something that happens a lot. I'll raise an issue, or anyone. It doesn't have to be me, but someone will raise an issue, and I may be privy to the fact that this is happening to people. But you always get that one guy in the corner who raises his hand and is like, "I don't see that." Or Paul, you always complain about Edge hijacking web links or whatever nonsense it is you're worried about this week, and I never see that. So it must never happen. It's like saying, I don't have cancer, so cancer must not exist.
Right. No, I have a perfect grip on reality, and I reject yours.
I guess all I'm asking for from people is to maybe look out in the world and see what's happening. And if it's not happening to you, congratulations. But
do you know why?
Could you tell the rest of us? Yeah, what are you doing right? Is it a metabolic thing? I'd like to know. And then I haven't written about this yet, although I became aware of this a couple of months ago, and then found out I had actually sort of written about it several months ago. But Microsoft is retiring what it calls the legacy troubleshooters in Windows 11. Now, what does that mean? When you troubleshoot in Windows today, it runs that troubleshooting platform they have, which, by the way, debuted in Windows 7. I wrote, and I think that's true. And these are those wizards that kind of step through, like, you're not connected to the internet. We'll reset your, connectoid, and does it work? And blah blah blah. And they try to help you. But of course, I will be writing about this soon. But I looked at this and I thought to myself, well, okay. I feel like I'm up on Windows to some degree. Mm-hmm. What's the new? Is there a new Windows troubleshooting thing? And the answer is yes. And this is one of the two things I thought people would not have ever heard of. There is an app in Windows 11 called Get Help that I assume 99.9% of the people listening to or watching the show have either never seen or have completely ignored, because it says Get Help and you don't need help. But actually, this is going to be the home for the new troubleshooting platform. Actually, it could be the same thing on the back end. I actually don't know.
Right.
So if you run a troubleshooter today, which you can do, it will have a link in the bottom of the dialog box that says, hey, legacy troubleshooters are going away. Learn more. You can click on that, go to a Microsoft support page. It'll explain it. And it actually steps through the various troubleshooters they're replacing with this Get Help app. Nice. And I did a few of them just to kind of see what they look like. And it's the same sort of thing, but it's just a modern app, right? So the legacy troubleshooters are these kind of Windows Win32 kind of control panel type interfaces.
Yeah.
That have persisted.
MMC, the management console.
Yeah. And they work fine. They're fine. I honestly, I would say the only times I use them a lot or have had to use them has been networking, which is why I said that one first. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you might need it for, back in the day, you would need it for such things as my fonts appear blurry, or, when we were moving to high DPI displays and all that kind of stuff. But I think these days, you don't really, they're not super necessary, but, anyway, it's not you issue, but I threw it in here because it's another thing that's kind of happening in Windows that no one's really talking about. And then maybe it's not a huge deal, but I just think people should know about it. And I don't know why I haven't written about it yet, but at some point I'm going to have to update the book. But, I should say.
Kind of a Stockholm syndrome thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So long, you forget you're being beaten.
Right. So if you're on Windows 11, 22H2 or older, including Windows 10, whatever supported version of Windows, this is not going away. They're not going to update this in those older versions of Windows. Mm-hmm. But for Windows 11 fully supported, you move forward to 23H2, starting on a certain date that I think is next year. These are going away. So just something to be aware of.
We'll call it progress.
What else can I say about young people?
You kids, get off of my Windows, you kids.
Yeah. I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't. Okay.
For these darn interns.
Yeah. The interns. Yeah. Let the intern do it.
Right.
How are kids going to learn if you don't let them try?
I don't want them to try on the thing that is so central and core to how Windows works,
Right.
Yeah. Play with paint, as you have been, by the way, jerks. But
that's what they gave the intern, by the way.
Actually, so I should speak to that because I wrote about this a few months ago. Microsoft, I don't remember the dates anymore. It doesn't matter. But Microsoft at some point gave a modern front end to the classic Paint app in Windows 11. Bright white, didn't support dark mode. Okay, terrible, whatever. But what they screwed up was all the keyboard shortcuts. Remember, I complained about this. So one of the common things I do in Paint is I'll have an image. I do Control E, and literally for the previous 20 years in a row, the width box, because there's a width and a height, would be selected. And so I have muscle memory I knew I could just start typing numbers and I could resize this thing. starting with that, whatever that version, I think it was late last year, some other control was selected. And to get to the with box, you had to hit tab 5 times. You could hit, I think it's like control tab or shift tab or whatever it is to go backwards 2 times. But I don't understand changing something that basic. It's so stupid. Plus, I also don't understand putting this UI out without supporting dark mode. Also stupid. They did this right with Notepad, for example. So one of the other issues in the "it's not you" thing, actually, this does fall into this category. I should have added it. Is there are features that come to Windows that don't come to everybody or to every computer, and I've witnessed this in the several computers that I use many, many times. Here's a great example. Back in November and then again in December, because Microsoft, they silently updated OneDrive so that it has this new modern UI. If you do a clean install of Windows 10 today, Windows 11, sorry, and go right into OneDrive before anything happens, you will still see the old UI that debuted with the first version of Windows 11 and is in Windows 10 is still there. Some update occurs over time where you get the modern UI. But the thing that's different between PCs is some computers, it lets you back up 3 folders to OneDrive, really sync, but they call it backup. And one lets you back up 5. And to this day, right now, here it is, August 2023, almost a year later, 2 years later, really, I still have computers where I can't back up all of my system folders to OneDrive. It's crazy. So with that in mind, this past summer, remember the day, you guys remember this, I was complaining about Paint. There he goes again, right? He's going to town on Paint. He's complaining. He can't stop himself. And I brought up Paint to make my point. And I was like, the keyboard shortcut worked. The one I said didn't work. That's weird. But it was only on that computer. And what I've noticed over the course of the summer is that different behaviors on different computers. One day, less than a month ago, with the full white version of Paint, I did Control E, and that width box was selected. I was so surprised by this, I tabbed 5 times because now I'm getting used to doing that and left it behind. I see different behaviors on different computers. Well, wow. I'm happy to announce that Microsoft just updated the Paint app again. It supports dark mode now, yay. And I believe, at least on my computers, I shouldn't say this definitively, but if you do a Control E, it starts up in the width box just like it used to. So it only took them, 9 months to set this thing right that they screwed up. But this is what using Windows is like. How long
did it take to convince them it was wrong?
I know. Well, that kid he probably had to go back to elementary school, whoever was working on it. And no, I don't know. I'm sorry. I can't stop doing it. But this is the frustration of using Windows. It's especially frustrating for those of us, and this is all of us here probably, right? And including people watching or listening, who have used Windows for a long time. Yeah. These kind of regressions they're problems, they're bugs. They're, unless they're purposeful, right? And I think we can agree that not doing the right thing is not the purpose. I think it's just a mistake. It's just bad programming.
Yeah. No, and inexperience, like just not being aware of the user experience. They just they're living in the sandbox and they could just play with things, not understanding. And people who have work to do.
I don't mean to generalize, but one of the big complaints I had about a year ago or so was this video they put out, like how we designed a new start. Maybe it was 2 years ago. Oh yeah, how we designed a new start. And I remember this stupid thing. Yeah, and I was like, this is like a bunch of Mac people who have never used Windows. And they're like, this is how I think it should look.
Young
and
people and Mac people.
It's the worst
you don't
combination.
Know anything. It was just like, that's how it felt. I know it's unfair. I don't mean, I'm not trying to generalize, but it's, you want to think that the people, working on the thing you're using, know the product, care about it, want to do the right thing. And this is the central disconnect I feel in Windows these days. You don't get that feeling.
Yeah.
I want to talk to
barreling toward this new version.
Folks doing the work are a long way disconnected from the user.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Burr, I think it was Bill. No, it's Bill Burr. Some comedian. Bill Burr probably did a joke one time about you call a plumber, and his wife is telling you, what she thinks you should do. And I didn't call you. I called the plumber. I want the guy who knows what he's doing to tell me what's going on, right? And I just feel like the people who are fronting this stuff right now, it's like no one else seems to. Bob, do you want to do, core networking in Windows? I'm kind of a Mac UI guy. It's okay. You got it.
It'd be great. You'll have a great time.
It's similar. Yeah. I don't know. So it's a frustrating thing. This is This is my whole life, I think, is what life is like now with this stuff. Okay, let's move on. We talk about seasons here. You know,
wait a minute. Before you do that, let me do an ad.
Oh.
Yeah. So you're done bitching, right?
Well, I can't promise that, but yes, that round. That round is
that's not a thing.
Don't segue so quickly into the non.
I'll think of something else to complain about.
So I could do an ad and then resume.
I just wanted to get past that.
Actually, I want to talk about the Microsoft event that's coming up, and it looks like I think it looks like they're going to stream it because of the time they set, which is 1 in the East Coast.
Not going to stream it. I know.
Wow.
We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it.
Yep.
All my hopes and dreams of coming in at 10 a.m. on the 21st are shot.
Sorry.
I was going to work on a Thursday just for you, Paul. Our show and for our fine sponsors, in this case, ACI Learning. We love these guys. You know what else I love in the world? Managed service providers. Russell is our managed service provider. He's the best. He's the best. MSPs love ACI Learning because they have a team, in some cases, teams of hundreds of techs who are going to go out in the field, help, get networks running and secure services for businesses and so forth. And if you're an MSP, you know that the most important thing, that team of yours needs to keep its chops up, needs to be trained. But why give them training they hate? Because they ain't going to finish it and they ain't going to learn it. When you can give them team training they enjoy, they're entertained by short format content from ACI Learning. 7,200 hours of up-to-date, on-demand content, and I mean up-to-date, allows your MSPs and your team to train whenever you want, during a break, during lunch, on the way home. I know you know the name IT Pro. They've been part of our network forever, part of ACI Learning now. Yeah, IT Pro's expanded capabilities with ACI Learning make it possible for MSP teams to keep their courses up to date in all aspects of IT, including MS Cloud, AWS, CompTIA, and so much more. Wouldn't you love it to get those advanced certs for your team under the belt? And they love it too, by the way. It's a benefit they love. One proud MSP leader said, I had 110 engineers in the field, and we had dozens of IT Pro accounts. Last year alone, they passed over 40 certs. That's a great feeling. Your team loves it because they're advancing their skills. They're becoming more valuable. You love it because they're becoming more valuable. They're advancing their skills. ACI Learning's over 80% completion rate. That's 50% higher than the other guys, the industry average. Means that people who take these courses from ACI Learning love them. They complete them because they're entertained and informed. They know there's value here and they enjoy it because they're learning from people who have the same passion they do for this stuff, for this content. Oh, and MSPs love the practice labs, not just for practicing the skills they're learning in class, but because they can also use those to test and deploy new apps and updates before actually compromising the live system they're working on. MSPs also love and everybody loves the ACI practice tests. As you probably know, I certainly experienced this when I was a youngin'. If you can practice the tests before you actually take the tests, I did this with the SATs, you're going to do much better because you're familiar with the format, you're comfortable, and you have the confidence to know, yeah, I know this stuff. ACI's practice exams let you take the tests again and again until you really know you're ready to sit for the exam. ACI Learning's new Insights, this is a great tool, this Insights tool, you can actually assign it to your team and it'll identify their weaknesses. It provides you, management, and individuals with assessments that are so valuable. It assists in professional development planning, know which courses to take, where you need to shore up some expertise in certain areas, that kind of thing. Identify skill gaps. It lets you personalize your training to protect your business. Insights is the name of that tool. It's really, really cool. ACI Learning provides you with a personal account manager so that you know you're not wasting anyone's time. Your account manager will help work with you to ensure your team only focuses on the skills that matter to your organization. So that's where you don't have to do that redundant training because you don't need it. And also, by the way, ACI Learning is ISO certified. So you know you're getting world-class training. The training you and your team deserve. It is fantastic. Keep your team's IT skills current. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit. Twit listeners will receive at least 20% off and as much as 65% off the IT Pro Enterprise Solution Plan. Discount depends, of course, on the size of your team. So best thing to do, visit go.acilearning.com/twit, fill out the form, and get a exact quote tailored to your needs. Go, but at least 20% off, as much as 65% off. Go.acilearning.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support. They sponsor the studio. They make it possible to do Windows Weekly with these two, these crazy clowns. Paul,
I just thought about something else. No,
I hate you youngins, Thurrott.
I hate young people.
You darn kids.
You kids.
It really isn't like that.
All right, let's talk about the seasons, because you started and I want to talk about that.
So spring is developer season, right? Yep. We have Google I/O, we have Microsoft Build, and we have Apple WWDC. That's then the fall is new hardware season.
Yay.
And there's several events to kind of keep your eye on, one of which is happening in just a few days, which is IFA. This is the annual event held in Berlin. This is where the PC makers, there's other stuff that goes on, but from our perspective, this is where PC makers announce new PCs for the holiday season.
Right.
Intel will have their 14th gen Intel Core chipsets out for desktops, not for mobile. That happens in the spring, early next year. And the thing to look for here, of course, is that thing we've been talking about all year, which is NPUs, or whatever they call them, right? Neural processing units or AI engines or whatever you want to say. And lots of talk about AI. We've already seen a peek at this when Lenovo announced their earnings a week or two ago. They were talking about future growth, and they were saying AI is going to be the driver of this stuff. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about, about some PC market share, not market share, just PC sales and yada, yada, yada. So yes, this is one of the growth trajectories for PCs, particularly in the commercial space. So there's that, right? That's the first one. Apple, of course, is having their annual iPhone event in September 12th. Well, who cares? Microsoft is having a special event, as we know, on September 21 in New York City. I am going to this. I'm very excited. It's a live event. This will be my first in-person Microsoft event since November 2019, if you can believe that.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, it's been almost 4. I know. It's saying that out loud. It's like, that can't be right.
I think this is going to be a big deal. I saw the invitation, and it's like Satya Nadella is going to speak, and I think this is going to be a big thing, right? Is this Windows 12?
So this is the thing. So when I first saw a mention of this, it was on Twitter, and it was a headline that said it's going to be a Surface event, and I'm like, that's interesting. And then I looked at my email, and I had an invitation. It didn't say anything about Surface. And I thought, okay. And someone must know something. I accept that. It's going to be Surface/Windows. And we talked about this, but I'm sure they're going to mention AI. Well, they've sent a second invite, and this one had a little more specificity. And that is, this event is about Microsoft 365, Surface, Windows, Bing, and more, AI specific. So Surface is part of it, but it's only a minor part.
Copilot?
I'm thinking Copilots. I'm thinking NPUs, right? We talked about this notion that future Surfaces, especially the high-end premium versions, will have NPUs, right? So I was already interested in this, and now I guess I'm even more interested. So does this mean Windows Copilot won't be just the junk we saw this year? It'll be more impressive? I don't know. Does it mean we're going to hear anything about Windows 12? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So we'll see. They're not going to live stream it, unfortunately.
That's a bummer.
Seems a little nuts.
Yeah, we were really looking forward to covering this.
Yep. I'm surprised by that, honestly. I've been to events like this. I'm sure they will eventually broadcast the the event part of it. Yeah. But a big chunk of it's going to be some big room where you walk around from table to table and talk to different groups and get demos and do things like that. So we'll see.
Boy, so that's on. Feels like they're missing an opportunity to get some buzz.
So I think it's because it's live. I think they're still trying to. Well, Richard knows this better than anybody. Richard's done a lot of behind the scenes stuff with Microsoft events, and better than anybody. Just explain the situation there, because I think a lot of people there just aren't used to doing this anymore, right?
Yeah,
as much as you can. I mean,
basically, they got out of the live production business for 3 years.
Yeah.
And so not only did the folks who like doing live production go do something else, but just a natural turnover.
Yeah.
Left.
It's like institutional memory no longer exists. It's like, how do we do this?
And then normally that happens anyway, right? Like but normally we're educating them. Like it's been normal for me for more than a decade, maybe close to 20 years, to be on the campus almost every month.
Sure.
And inevitably, at least once each month, I'm talking to someone. Well, this is a podcast. This is how an MVP works. Like you have new people coming in all the time, and you're having those conversations. And that didn't happen for 3 years.
Yeah. So now everyone's gone. It's not like we lose one Bob every month. We've lost everybody.
We've lost everybody.
So that I'm just guessing. I mean,
turned over completely.
Yeah.
And so you're in a lot of. I mean, I'm enjoying it. But you are starting from scratch. Like you're having. Very extensive. So when you say influencer, what do you mean?
Right.
I mean, what's a live event mean to you now? Like that's the scope of things. And the expectations of leadership are really interesting. I've had some conversation where they're like, okay, well, we want to do hybrid because we can't fit 30,000 people into the Seattle Convention Center.
Right.
So I need at least 30,000 watching. And I'm like, are you counting 4,000 people in a room alongside 26,000 people online as the same thing?
Right.
Really?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, exactly.
It's not even close to the same thing. The other part is to build a room that can hold 4,000 people and then also stream well is a too common number.
Oh, yeah. No,
the equipment you need to make that room work is expensive.
I mean, this is just
that's why Apple built their own event space, right?
Yeah.
Well, inevitably.
And they use effectively.
So if you think of all those buildings that Microsoft just built on campus that they started before, it's like repurpose them into a streaming space. Like you might as well
turn them into apartments. We probably need those too.
The download numbers for the Microsoft event last year were the largest of all the events we did, bigger than Apple.
Sure.
People want to see this. I'm not sure which one. Lisa was telling me.
Probably our build. Interesting.
Yeah.
I just wonder if they like the commentary we're laying on top of it because I think they really struggle with context.
Right.
We spend our time on on these events.
Well, Microsoft especially.
One with you guys.
Apple's very good at distilling it down because they know really the big audience for all Apple events is
selling
the
to consumers.
They're selling to consumers. But Microsoft and Satya especially tend to be a little more generic and do need some contextualization. We really rely on you guys because you can explain what it means, And I think that's probably why. You're right.
I mean, I assume I shouldn't. Maybe we'll find out. I assume we can sort of tweet about it or whatever. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, obviously, what people are going to write about it, and we can't record anything. Maybe they're just this might suggest some future leaning stuff where things might not go right, and maybe they don't want that happening live.
It's a Surface event, so this is Panos.
It's not. No, it's not. It's actually an AI event that spans Microsoft.
That happens to span hardware.
Well, no, and I think that's the NPU bit, right? I don't think they're a big part of it. They're just part of it.
So I wonder if this is Kevin Scott.
I don't.
On the office as CTO, and not an events guy. Like this, not his thing.
I mean, they did a big live event in February.
We're not going to stream this. Like that's fascinating to me.
Yep.
Because the events team has been stream only for years for this whole pandemic period. They didn't want to do it in person event.
I don't know what to tell you.
I'm abundantly aware that there are forces out of Microsoft that where some folks is like, we just want to be online, and folks is like, we just want to be in person. I'm just amazed that the manifestation of this comes in September 21st. Like, I think the
answer is always hybrid now, and I don't understand not doing that. But.
Yes, and it's like, where do you prioritize?
Oh, and I should say to your point, and if you can only do one for some reason, that one is streamed. It's not with a small group of people in a row.
I'm with you, but I think streamed events are better when there's an audience. Like people have to make that stream, and to have people in the room watching them and reacting to them makes them better.
I agree.
And so, you kind of got to do both.
I mean, you'll see it eventually, but I think what you'll see is the live stage stuff and not the whatever they call it, as you walk around and get those experiences. I don't know.
Yeah. Like what's the format that makes sense? And I think back to you remember the old Connect events? It's been a few years.
Yeah, I do.
They were in New York. and they were small. There was only a few hundred people in the audience.
It was
enough to make the speaker better.
Just so people understand what you're talking, what he's saying is connect, not connect, and it was connect with a parentheses behind it. And this was an IT pro. I guess there was some dev too, a little bit, but
kind
IT
of
pro.
dev. Yeah, there's a lot of open web stuff they talked about there.
It was always after Ignite, which was weird because you would have thought it would have been right between Build and Ignite in the middle of the year, but it wasn't. It was in December usually, I think. One of the many videos I chose not to put on my YouTube channel was a Connect briefing that somebody leaked to me that they had provided to the MVPs ahead of the show, and I was like, this one's maybe a little too much, but yeah, that was a good little show.
They get embargo briefing books a little early. Yeah,
this was an actual video. Like it was probably like it was a webinar, they walked through stuff and. Okay, sorry, a little off track there. So Google is next. Google will announce Pixel 8 series on October 4 in New York City. They just announced that today. Related to this, they just killed the Pixel Pass subscription, which I think says a lot about the rise in cost of subscription cloud services. Now, this was number 2 on my list of things you probably have never heard of. So everyone probably knows that Apple has something called the Apple One subscriptions. This is 3 tiers of different subscription bundles that you can get for different prices per month. 2 years ago, Google announced a similar thing, but 1 tier called Pixel Pass. The only difference was that you could get a different Pixel phone, like a Pro or non-Pro, $45 to $55 per month. It was a good deal if you wanted all those services. Most people didn't. YouTube Premium, YouTube Music Premium, Google Pay Pass, which I believe was a game subscription service, Preferred Care, which is a warranty thing for the phone. I think these things have gotten so expensive they can't do this. Like they would have to raise the price. This
bundle.
Yep, too much.
Wow.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. So, as far as Pixel hardware goes, Pixel 8, Pixel 8 Pro. I don't know. I'm sure there's going to be other stuff. I have Pixel Watch 2 has been rumored, probably, and then I don't know. Maybe there'll be new Pixel, but I have no idea what they're going to do. But also, not really completely on target here. And then this isn't really this fall, obviously, but CES 2024 is in January. And the reason I mentioned that is that by that point, we will see PC makers announcing new laptops and other portable computers based on the 14th gen Intel mobile chipset. And those are the ones that are supposed to have this AI engine, as Intel calls it, the NPU. So I'm curious with IFA happening, Microsoft doing an AI push, if we're not going to see some early stuff. We'll see. I don't know. So between IFA and CES, I think this is our window for.
We're really staring the NPU in the face, right? It's like, if not now, then when?
And if not us, who? Or something.
Somebody's got to build it.
I don't know. So there's your events. We're entering the season. It's exciting.
Now, would you actually go to CES, Paul? That's a lot of people.
Nope, not doing it.
All right.
Now, if Microsoft said to me, hey, and this hasn't happened in a while, and I'm not good buddies with the guy running the division anymore, but I want you to come to have a meeting, I would do that. But as far as going to the CES floor and walking around, no way. I would do the little hotel, HP, Lenovo briefing things, and not go to CES, maybe. But still.
Yeah, and I've done a few CESs over the years, but I can't imagine Microsoft engaging all this. In the days of the Microsoft CEO having the primary keynote at CES, they're past.
I just posted that video. So whatever year it was, 2010 maybe, that Bill Gates did his last CES keynote.
Right, before it was handed over to Steve
Ballmer, who did it for 4 years, I think, maybe 5.
Something like that. And then there was that weird one when Sanofsky did an announcement the day before that was basically
that's right. Keynote. But what I had forgotten was the day that Bill Gates did that keynote. We knew it was going to be his last one beforehand, but he kind of came out and said, "Hey, it's my last one." Also, I am stepping down from my day-to-day activities at Microsoft. Just kidding. Right. But it was, I'd forgotten that was part of the thing. And it's very interesting to go back in time and look at the stuff that he announced.
More like 2008. Like that's pretty far back.
Yeah, but it was a while ago. It seems so antiquated compared to what we have today. But a lot more consumer stuff from Microsoft back then. I mean, they were really throwing stuff at the wall and nothing stuck, but they tried.
Yeah, and Microsoft also spent a lot of production on those keynotes too. Like it was
maybe they're
he had his mother doing the slides.
Like they're just like,
Yeah, I do. I do think they're better.
We don't want to do this anymore. You people.
The thing is, it's unnecessary because, well, no, I think what they're bitter about is that Microsoft, there's always been that yin and yang at Microsoft of consumer business. Business has always been the much bigger slice of the pie. And they always felt, and there's an argument to be made, like, hey, every person who walks into a business is a human being. They have their own life at home. They do personal technology. It's all very obvious and everything. And they made a big consumer pushes over the years. It is fascinating how poorly that stuff fared and how good some of it was, or how forward-leaning a bunch of it was, or how they were first.
But this is such a grass is greener thing. It's like, hey, we kill it in enterprise. We got to do better with consumer. Well, and everybody else is like, I'd love to kill it in enterprise.
So I mentioned this notion of kind of what I call institutional memory. There's also like institutional jealousy, right? This notion that Google is killing it in the cloud, not cloud compute, but in search and advertising, really, and Apple is killing it with devices. And why can't we do that?
Yeah, jealousy. And,
I think somebody else good at something. It's not right.
Well, it was almost like antitrust did the little thing where they poked them on the shoulder and they looked around, and then Google and Apple raced ahead with their stuff, and Microsoft was in no position to do what they did to Netscape and WordPerfect and Lotus and every other company on earth back in the 90s. And here we are. And, honestly, the world's a better place. And I say that as a Microsoft guy. I mean, it really is. It's not perfect.
But the consent decree has also been over since 2011.
I know. But they never got their mojo back.
It's been a long time. And then, I mean, the big deal with the whole OpenAI thing and Bing AI and so forth, it's the first time since the consent decree, Microsoft's taking the lead on a technology.
That's right. Yeah, I like to see them taking big bets. Activision Blizzard is not taking a lead on anything, but it is them just really throwing a lot of money at something and saying, hey, look, this is important. We want to be part of this.
A lot of money in context of what? That company has a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I mean,
we don't actually know the shape of the deal. Is that a cash deal or is it just a shares deal? Because if it's a shares deal, they're going to get it all back with a market bump.
I don't know off the top of my head. I think a big chunk of it is cash because there's a big cash payout. Well, it's cash for Activision Blizzard.
A lot of cash.
So, there's a lot of cash. They do. They can cover it. I know.
Yeah.
I know. But it's still like buying a Lexus for the cash. I mean, good for you, but it's still a lot of money.
Yeah, billion here, billionaire. Pretty soon you're talking about real money.
Right. Nice. Okay, so that's that. Devices. Okay. So how do I frame this one? This is interesting. So lately, for some reason, Microsoft has been releasing Windows Insider builds like after the show. Like there was a long period of time where right before the show, the day of the show, the day before the show, there would be insider builds. And they've,
do you think they're watching, Paul?
No, I don't. I mean, I do think some are maybe, but no, I don't think anyone important is decision makers.
Like, no. Wait till after Paul's talk, then let's make him wrong.
I'd like to think they were that bitter and petty. That would be great.
That'd make you happy.
I'm glad that you're a child too. That's good. I don't know. I don't believe that, but I mean, that would be funny if that were true. So late last week, there was one build each to Beta Canary Dev. I don't know why I ordered those like that, but the Beta channel build that we got has a new home view and settings. So if you're doing this thing, testing 23H2, you can go take a look at it. It's kind of a neat little dashboard thing. If you're familiar with the settings app, it used to just dump you into the system view. And now there's a new home view. And it's just got your recommended settings you might want to do. Cloud storage, how's that looking? If you have Microsoft subscriptions like Microsoft 365 or Xbox Game Pass, whatever, you'll see that there. A couple little, there's not much you can do in fact, there's nothing you can do to customize it, but it's kind of a neat little front end to settings. I think that's nice. Maybe you went there for a reason, you want to change some configuration. They put some of the common configurations up front. So that's nice. There's a slightly new UI for casts. You may recall that is Windows key plus K, which now I'll never forget because I brain farted on that last week, but no big deal there. And there's a new Windows backup app, which you may get excited about, but don't because it is terrible. And
also written by children.
Well, okay. So what this thing is just a front end to 4 features that are built into Windows. I want to say 3 of, no, technically we had all of these before. So one of them is folder backup. And this is the thing that goes through OneDrive. And you may recall I said some computers, I have 3 folders I can back up. Some I have 5. On this computer, I have 3. So there's an example of this thing not being up to date. So it's just a front end to the back. It's really sync, but Microsoft calls it backup, a folder backup capabilities of OneDrive. There's something called apps. You're like, nice. This addresses the app. I can restore apps. Sounds great. No, you can't restore apps. So if you do a certain variant of the reset this PC function, you can retain your store apps, right? These are mostly the modern apps, but any apps that you acquire through the store, not desktop apps that you downloaded from the web, which I think for a lot of Windows users is still a big chunk of that stuff we do. So what this adds is the ability to remember where you have pinned those apps. So if they're pinned to the front page of the start menu or to your taskbar, this will actually, I believe, I haven't tried it yet, but my understanding is it will bring those things back. That is new. Not a big deal, but it's new. Windows settings and preferences sync. You probably know that this feature debuted in Windows 8, has been significantly detuned over time. It's worse in Windows 11 than it was in 10, which was worse in Windows 8. It is not any better in this release, and who cares? And then one I don't quite understand, because this is just built into Windows today, but and tied into your MSA, your Microsoft account, is credential sync. And this is Wi-Fi network passwords and other passwords, whatever that means. So if you use Microsoft Edge, and God help you, I've told you not to, but if you do, those things are synced. Your passwords and all your other browser data are synced through your Microsoft account.
So they're just trying to be a password manager now? Are they the new LastPass?
Yep.
They need Bitwarden?
That's right. Yeah, they are.
Apple's doing the same thing. Chrome does that. I think everybody's kind of getting into that business, probably recognizing that normal.
We want everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Normal people are not, using password managers still to this day.
No, and maybe it behooves us to do a good job.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
I have no problem with that.
No.
I think that's fine.
I agree.
Fine.
Getting people to use different passwords on every site is more important than maintaining an ecosystem of password managers.
It's kind of the same reason that they do this backup thing too, right? That where automatically are uploaded to OneDrive and stuff, because they realize people.
So there's going to be more forcing of MSA and stuff. We're going to talk about this in our future episode. I'm sort of working my way through this stuff, but this is all part of yes. So the pros and cons of this are, yes, for most people, it makes sense for this stuff to happen automatically. They're going to be protected. That's necessary for normal people. On the other hand, I don't like Microsoft shoveling this down our throats.
It's annoying to advanced users. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. And if in Windows 11, 22H2.
By the way, welcome to the Macintosh.
Shut up, Leo.
But that's always been Apple's policy. Is we know better than you. Exactly, Richard.
Yeah. Right. So, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying.
No, I didn't mean it's time to move. No, I meant
yes. Okay.
If you want to be, if you want to be in a nanny operating system,
this is part of that.
If you want to know how you don't know how to do your own work, you should be in the Apple landscape.
Okay. So I don't always agree with what Apple does either, but I also get the feeling that adults are manning the helm there, and that something smart is at least happening. This is like an insane clown car of stupidity. Like I don't even. Why would you trust
the kids again? Isn't it?
People.
There's a title.
So I just. This thing, look, I'm going to have to write about it. I'm going to have to use it. I'm going to have to see what it looks like. This is not solving the problem. And interestingly, and this is completely coincidental to this, someone on Twitter asked me a week or two ago, hey, is there something like, is it called Time Machine.
Time Machine.
On
That's a Mac thing.
Time Machine and Mac OS. Yeah. So Time Machine, if you look it up, this thing debuted 1 million years ago. And the idea was that you took, for what it was, absolutely. You plug in external storage. And it does these kind of over-time backups. So it helps you do things like... It actually
says when you plug in an external drive, you want to use this for Time Machine?
Yeah.
And you say, right. And you forget that you're backing up completely.
That's right. But of course, this is the way we used to compute, right? You had a laptop, you had an external USB drive or firewall drive, whatever you had back in that day. And to access this backup, you have to be there with the drive. Like, you can't be out in the world and like, oh my God, the system went south. I believe you can use Time Machine to also do like a full backup if you want to bring the whole system.
That's
down,
right. You can restore from Time Machine.
What? Yeah. So what it is,
and incidentally, that's a perfect example of hand-holding users, but you can also not use it. And so, and what for a long time I said, oh, don't use Time Machine, just use a regular backup. It's better for a variety of reasons. Now I just go, I'm going to have Time Machine on because it does versioning. You can go back in time on a version and do my own backup. And you get you have
Leo, you're killing me. You're cutting to the chase of my
sorry.
The point. My point. No, it's fine. It's fine because I'm literally. So someone asked me, is there something like Time Machine on Windows? Now I assumed that this person, not knowing what Time Machine was was not asking me that exact question. What they really meant was, I want something that is modern that I could do backups and then bring everything back, right? And in Windows, we used to have something called Windows Backup. Ironic, because this new thing is called Windows Backup. And Windows Backup was a image-based backup system that would do a slice and time backup of the entire system, and you could restore it to the entire system. Windows also has a tool that almost no one knows about. It's still there. It's buried. In fact, it's buried more in Windows 11 than it was in Windows 10, called File History, which is that file versioning thing. And this is for local computers. You had to have a separate drive for this, attached to the same computer. So much like Time Machine, sorry. It would just do automatic version backup. So you had a document, maybe you had 113 versions of it. You'd be like, oh, I deleted this major section.
Nice. I didn't even know
go
that
through
existed.
the UI.
That's nice.
No one does. And the UI was terrible. It was desktop based. I want to say probably did. No, it almost certainly debuted in Windows 7, possibly Vista. I think 7. Doesn't matter. Anyway, these things are both Windows Backup is gone, I believe.
I knew it was slated for removal when they added legacy
when they used the
parentheses.
Name. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was like the Windows 7. For a while, it was Windows 7 Backup. These tools are antiquated, and like Time Machine, which still relies on an external drive. It's just that these are tools from a different era. So I assuming what this person meant rather than what he asked, I answered the question differently, which is, there's really 3 things you're looking at when you want to restore your computer. And there's a tip in here that I think is going to be valuable for everybody. You want to restore the Windows, the operating system. You want to get Windows back to some factory fresh state. So this is built into the system. It's wonderful. It's been there since Windows 8. I don't know why I keep trying to guess when things debuted, but PC reset, PC restore. It's called reset this PC these days. There's different options you can do with it, but it sits there. It keeps itself up to date. So if you've upgraded Windows, it will upgrade you to bring you back to the new version of Windows, and you get that kind of factory fresh, whatever. The thing is
that the reset my PC? That's
yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. That's right.
I like that. But, that was a nice thing, because that's what we used imaging for in the early days. Was I'm going to make an image of this build so I know I can get back to this point.
So. 2 problems. One, your PC maker has almost certainly modified the image. So that means whatever crapware your PC maker has installed will be reinstalled. By the way, even if it isn't, over a couple of reboots, Windows Store, you're still going to get some of it back. It's no way to completely erase that. But Windows infamously installs its own crapware. Now it's a nice little benefit of the operating system, right? You get crapware right out of the.
Thanks so much.
So here's the tip. Yeah. If you don't want any of that, download a Windows 7, that would work too, actually. Download a Windows 11 ISO and make your own install media.
Yeah.
And that won't give you the PC maker crap, right?
Right.
Or you can just, using reset this PC, have it download the version from the cloud that will achieve the same thing.
Right.
When you install it, though, in the first screen of setup, you get this thing that everyone just skips by. It says language to install, time and currency format, and keyboard or input method. So for us in the United States, that's English US and US across those 3 choices. Change the top one. Is it the top one? Yeah. To English World.
What?
And then install.
What?
And what you will get.
Why would I want that?
Because you will get no crapware, and
what?
You won't get into the advertising screens in the Windows setup experience, right? So it tries to sell you on Microsoft 365.
So is it just in the language to install, not in the time and format?
It is. It's the time and currency format to English World. If you're in Europe, just change it to Europe. So the first one,
I'm looking at your screenshot. By the way, this is Thurrott Premium, worth subscribing for just this article alone. So language to install, you leave English United States, but time and currency format, you make English World. Is that right? Yep. The second one.
That's right. The secsecond one. Now,
how interesting.
Here's what you're going to get. The out-of-box experience, as we call it, the light blue series of wizard screens will be much shorter because there's no advertising. They're not trying to sell you on anything. They don't know how to sell you because English World is not a place, right? So that's fun. When the downside to this is when you get into the Windows desktop, your start menu is going to be almost completely empty. There's not going to be almost anything there.
So if you French, I'm okay.
Right. Yeah. The thing is, all the apps are still there, right? If you go into all apps, that list.
But this is what I want, because then I can put what I want.
I think this is what a lot of people want. Now, once you do get to the desktop, first thing you should do, by the way, go into settings, navigate to time language, set it back to US or wherever you are, like US English in my case, right? Be sure to do that. So that's the OS, right? You want the OS as clean as possible. One of the problems with an image-based backup is you're only as good as the backup.
Though, you say you're going to get an error when you do this, right?
Yeah.
So just ignore that. Just say skip.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like you can try again or skip. Just skip it.
Something went wrong. UBE region.
I would say something went right.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to sell you stuff.
Look at this pristine start menu. There's nothing in it.
Alrighty. So that's one of three. So OS, there you go. There's your OS, right? There's one thing built into Windows, but you can make it a little bit better. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want. A couple of months ago, I wrote a big article about OneDrive file sync, this folder backup.
By the way, I'm sure Microsoft's going to fix this now that you've mentioned it.
Maybe. That's been, sorry. I feel very strongly that anyone working with a computer, you could be on a Mac, a Linux, I don't care what it is. Everything you work, every document you work in, every file, related like a document-like file, should be synced to the cloud. Because if you wake up one day and turn on the computer, and nothing happens, you're not going to lose any of it. It's all synced to the cloud, right?
That's right.
So that's Microsoft. Windows Backup is kind of acknowledging this. They're trying to push people to using their folders. I don't happen to do that myself. I think a lot of power users might have their own ideas what they want to do, but however, whatever system you use, if you want to use the thing built into Windows with the folder backup, or you want to do your own thing, just make sure that you're not a statistic, right? That don't be that guy who gets the backup religion after you lose something, right? So use OneDrive or use Dropbox, use whatever you want. I don't care, but I use OneDrive. It's built in and I pay for it, so that's good. But the third part of it is, and this is the incomplete one, is applications, right? We've talked a lot about the Windows Package Manager, which is Winget. And there's a graphical front end called Winget UI that you could also use. It automates updating the apps. That's important too. But Winget or Winget UI can help you install all of the apps you need using a script that just bulk installs them all one after the other. It's beautiful. The incomplete bit is it doesn't do settings configuration sync. So what I mean by that, and this is the thing, Richard, remember maybe I was asking about this a week or two ago when you talked to the person behind Chocolatey, which is because I was kind of looking for something at that point. You'll have to go into each app one at a time and just kind of sign in, or do whatever it is.
It's specific to the app. There's really no way around that.
Yeah. So that's just with an image-based backup, obviously you'd get everything back. But the thing is, this is a clean install of Windows. It's a clean install of these apps. And then it's a fresh copy of your most recent data blasted down, whatever part you want sync. You don't have to sync all of it, by the way. Keep it in the cloud, but sync part of it, right? Which is what I do. It's not perfect. It's not exactly Time Machine. It's not exactly Windows Image Backup, but these are all modern solutions. These are all cloud-based solutions, by the way. And this whole process kind of from start to end for me is about an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
It's not bad at all. I think
we have
I use
logo. I just want to say we have a logo now for this particular segment of the show.
I don't even remember what I said anymore. But
in fact, Richard said, "Oh, that's the title, the clown car of stupidity." And here it is, Microsoft's Clown Show Corner. Welcome.
All right. Sure.
Yeah.
And that just drives into a tree, basically.
No, this is good. It is a little more elaborate, frankly.
It is.
I write for all of my OSs. I have, it's in Notion, actually, a list of things I do to set it up, and it takes a while. I have to say a package manager, though, is the key. And on Linux and Mac, partly, it doesn't come, it's not native on the Mac. You have to use a third-party tool. On Linux, though, not only does a package manager keep track of what you've installed, it updates it automatically. Does Winget do that too? Can I run Winget periodically and get the latest versions of those apps?
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk through that. So I in previous shows talked about Winget. I talked about Winstall, if you will, .app, which is a website where you can generate the script. So that you go to that site and you search for every single app you use, right? And it will generate a script. You'll add it to the queue, and it generates a script. And save that to your computer. Save it in OneDrive because that's the first thing you're going to sync, right? When you install it, Winget will not automatically keep it up to date, but you can, of course, run Winget from the command line to do that. But instead of doing that, use an app called Winget UI that does automate the process of updating those apps. Yeah. And by the way, you could use that app. I believe I haven't don't think I've done it this way, but you could just start with that app and do the same thing I just described, but just use that app.
It's kind of
I like the script.
This was solved like 40 years ago with Unix.
Yep.
They've finally gotten around to it on Windows.
Well, they're still fighting with the manifest part, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's really
that's
it's
right.
how does an app describe to an installer, here's what I need.
There's also this notion that, WinGet, I know there are critics of the Microsoft Store, but I always prefer to get no, it's not true. I often prefer to get the Microsoft Store version of an app. If you were using Firefox, for example, I would actually get the web version because it has a couple of features that are not in the package store version. But if you're paying for an app, for example, Photoshop Elements, or I also pay for Affinity Photo. This is like the most liberal license imaginable. You don't have any limits on how many PCs you can install it, use it on. It's wonderful. So it's something you can kind of safely blast on a PCs and not worry about. WinGet, which is the Windows Package Manager, works with two repositories, one of which is the store, one of which is just their WinGet repository. You can choose which version of an app, if it's in both places, to use. And that might be something you need to think about and know about. I found that, for example, like I install Brave manually. For some reason, when I install it through I don't think it's the store. It must be the WinGet's repository. It gets out of date and won't update on some cases. There's something weird about it. So I just don't do that one. Maybe it's fine now and I just haven't noticed. But this is something you'll need to play with. You may find with WinGet UI, for example, some apps, it will say, hey, you have an update. Do you want to install it? You say yes. And it's like, can't do it. There's certain apps for some reason that just don't work well. In those cases, you can go to the command line and just update it that way, or just go to the app and update it that way, right?
It's funny you should have mentioned the manifest, because there's actually a podcast about package management called The Manifest.
Really? Yeah. Okay, nice.
And to be fair, while Linux did get package managers like really early on, like in year 2, partly that was because of library dependency issues that were hairballs, that were really a nightmare. Keeping track of what this one uses this library, this uses that, and keeping track of all that. So it did solve a real problem.
I see this as a natural evolution of the path that Microsoft went down with GUIs, and then a later understanding that maybe some things are better off, especially in the admin space, being command lines and text space, and the early version being, I don't know, Exchange 2003 maybe, where they said or 7, whichever version, we're rewriting this from scratch. It's going to be all based in, can't be PowerShell, is it? PowerShell? I think all the commands were PowerShell. And the UI is just a GUI front end to all of those commands. There is no superset.
ISS administrator.
Yeah.
And IIS 6.
It's a good idea.
A shell that generated PowerShell, but everything was controlled by PowerShell.
Yeah. And the server core was part of this thinking. You got to get past one of the whole points of NT back in the day was to kind of beat Unix. And at the time, we really felt like the GUI was a big part of that. And it did make Windows Server more approachable, right? I mean, we can make that argument. Got it into small businesses in the 90s, et cetera. But as these things mature, there's some goodness to be had if you go back to kind of what we'll call the old way of doing things or whatever. So anyway, it is, what I would like to see is a Windows backup app like the one Microsoft just put out, instead of that piece of junk that was a front end to the 3 things I just described, right?
Right. There
and
you
would
go.
save
app
configuration and state. This is something this is a problem Microsoft could solve.
Yeah.
I think part of it is because Microsoft has this kind of dual personality with regard to Windows. They still think there are home users. And well, and that's,
well, I mean,
I know there are.
There
I'm being facetious, but that's very, I mean, this is something a sysadmin or a business IT professional gets, understands, knows the need of, and probably has cobbled something together.
There's no reason this system can work for everybody, because the GUI front end would serve end users.
Yeah.
The text-based command line interface would be good for those kind of power users, but it'd also be scriptable and automatable, and that would be the whole point of it, right? Mm-hmm. And anyway, we're slowly moving. We're getting there. So it's not, like I said, not perfect. It's not exactly what that person was asking for. It may not be exactly. I know there are people here who are like, oh, I don't know, I back up to an NAS, or I do whatever you do. People do different things, but this is a very modern, like I say, cloud-centric way of doing those tasks, and it really doesn't take that long.
Yeah, and they don't, by the way, have to be mutually exclusive. You can do All
That's
of
right.
the above. I do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could have that was. I'm sorry. That was Leo. That was the point you made, and I said you took it away from me, and I forgot to say it. I'm sorry. That's the final. That is the final point. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So
don't have
you
to
could
choose.
still use. So, and I should say before I get to that file history I mentioned earlier. File history is a local solution. OneDrive has file versioning too, and it syncs everywhere. So you can get to old versions of your files from any computer. This is the point. Don't lock it to a hard drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lock and make sure it's everywhere. That's the whole point. But maybe
It's
you don't
really
trust it.
nice.
Maybe you don't like it.
Yeah.
You can do both, and that's the point. You can use now. Of course, we don't have anything built into Windows that really is both, but you could use a third-party backup utility, whatever it is. Maybe you, like I said, you own a NAS. Maybe they have a PC backup.
They do.
Function.
Most NASs.
There's absolutely no reason you can't do both.
Yeah,
So if you don't
I do
trust
both.
it, or if you don't
Yeah.
like it, or you're not sure about it, keep doing what you're doing. Give it a shot.
This comes from the fact that you and probably Richard and I run many machines, are constantly getting new machines that we need to get into the same state as our
I
existing
review
machines.
at least a dozen computers a
And
year.
You just can't take the time. Like it
No,
needs to just be.
I
go
can't sit
do
there
this
like an
thing
idiot.
when you're done.
We have unique needs, obviously.
No,
but
I know,
this
but
is
it's
good
just-
for everyone. Everybody could really benefit. If you are not yet a member of Paul's premium version of Thurrott.com, this is alone a reason to subscribe. Roll your own Windows time
I'm
machine.
almost certainly I will do. I'm probably going to do a hands-on Windows episode about this exact topic.
That gives me a
and
little opening.
And I think I'm going to roll it into a discussion about this Windows backup thing, right? Because that will be the opening for that.
That might be a good reason to subscribe to Club Twit as well. $7 a month, and you get ad-free versions of all our shows. You get the great Club Twit Discord, where you'll see such fabulous things as Joe Esposito's stickers, which is very good at that. You also will get stuff like shows we don't put out in public. I don't want to put stuff behind a paywall. That's not the intent. It's just that we want to do things like Hands on Windows. And frankly, it's hard to get advertisers to support it. But since the club supports it, they pay for it, so they get access to it. And we put a few of these, maybe that'll be one of them, into the public,
just out in public
via YouTube, because I think this is going to be important. So if you want Hands on Windows, Hands on Mac, the Untitled Linux Show, if you want all our special events, if you want ad-free versions of the shows, and you want Paul Thurrott's Clown Show Corner, then you, which might be a better name for Hands on Windows, twit.tv/clubtwit. That's the place to go. You are listening to Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. All right. Now, that was kind of a great little digression from the middle of
it sure was,
something larger,
So,
but I'm glad you did it. That was really, really good. I thank you.
Yeah. Oh, right. Oh, yeah. I almost skipped over one myself. So Windows Copilot almost certainly coming in Windows 11 version.
That's going to be the big event,
H2.
right? It's all going to be...
I don't think that's going to be the thing of it, but it's going to be part of it. I will be part of it.
It's an AI event, right? September 21st. Right.
Yeah. So using Windows Copilot as an individual, I can say it's unimpressive. It is
It's
most
gimmicky.
of, but not.
I think we've all tired of it by now, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh, that
you
was
see
fun.
the numbers reflect that.
Yeah.
I don't think that someone who can't, like, imagine you're a normal person, like a non-technical person, and you cannot figure out how to put dark mode on, right? If you can't figure that out, I don't see you bringing up a Copilot and typing turn on dark mode. I just don't see it happening. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Prove
Let me
me
ask
wrong,
the
but-
AI how to do it.
Yeah, like by typing, because that's how I do things, right? I'm that. I don't
Yeah. Or can you make me a
Well, it's not a
Spotify
stretch for that to
playlist?
become voice too.
Yeah, which by the way was something that came up in your Copilot conversation on Run as Radio, which is
Right.
and you walked into something that I believe is will be true, which is today we talk about typing back and forth. This tech is a text and it's chat, right? I actually think the future of this, and I think you sort of said this in some ways, would be the person talking to the computer,
Right.
and the computer writing it out, and optionally saying it too, of course. But I actually think that mixture of interaction is a better one than just typing.
Well, and more say, the point of that being, there are phrases you can say that represent many clicks and moves and so forth that can be automated fairly well. They make this spreadsheet into a PowerPoint deck.
Yes.
The simplest thing in the world to say, and in the applied version of it, it's like, that's a lot of work. It's a bunch of steps. So.
The Bing chat stuff reminds me of the early Infocom games, the Zork and Adventure and all that stuff. And it's like
you're in a room of twisty passages all alike.
Yeah. Could you turn on dark mode? And then the problem was these things had a parser. And if you didn't say it exactly right, you weren't going to turn left and walk down the path. It would just say no. But there was a slight turn of phrase that would get you there. And this was true of later graphical games like the Sierra games, like King's Quest and those games. Same problem.
Right.
AI is exactly the same thing. Honestly, it's just a
large language models.
Yep. It's right. It's not just a little, table of things. It's a giant, it's a giant thing. But you still run into that issue. I think people are going to spend a lot of time refining a prompt, right? You'll do in other words, I want to create an image. I always use, the purple unicorn flying through space. And blah, blah. You get some stuff and you're like, okay, that's close. It's not exactly what I wanted. And then you refine it. You add some things to it. You do it again, right? I think this is going to be, in the short term, a very typical interaction. One of the things that happen with voice assistants, which those that survive will turn into these AI things, right, is they started being able to have conversations. Like you would ask it to do a thing and it would say yes, blah, blah. And they say, and now, and you didn't have to do the prompt phrase. You didn't have to remind them of the context. You could just continue down this path.
You're describing the thing that ChatGPT doesn't do. You request something of ChatGPT. It never asks you a question for clarification. It just tries to do it.
That's right. And you can't really do a follow-up. All you can do is repeat what you said, but add more information. And I think over time, this is how this is going to develop. But until it does, it's easier to do that with voice, I think, unless it's a complex thing. I don't know. You can copy and paste. But anywho, so to date, Windows Copilot to me has been silly. But there is something called the Bing Chat Enterprise Service, which is available today. Excuse me, I'm getting all excited. It's available today for Microsoft 365 customers, commercial customers, I should say. It's also available through the Edge sidebar if you use that browser. God damn you. And it includes all those back-end data protection services, commercial enterprises, and governments, and et cetera, would expect. So I've not tried it. But this may be a more useful step up than the basic junk that appears in Windows Copilot. So they're already testing that now. I think you have to be in the dev channel for right now. It will come to the beta channel because Windows Copilot is in the beta channel too.
At the same time, I still think about what Stevie said at Build and just this whole idea that Windows is in the perfect context for more language-based user interface than just about anybody. If they can get to a point where they're leveraging Windows' connection to those to third-party applications to also control them. Like if they can get Adobe to play ball so that you could use Windows Copilot to command PDF creation.
I feel like that was part of this vision. I think they
I thought it was part of the speech. I just don't see how they get there.
Right. Unfortunately,
the upside of an M365 Copilot, like we talked to with Carolina, was it's all controlled by Microsoft. They'll make their own. It'll be good.
I made this guess to Raphael or Brad, I don't remember, but this about the event, which was I sort of blurted out something about developer, and they're like, well, they're not going to announce and I was saying developer stuff at this event. And I said, well, hold on a second. What they might announce is some capability that's coming later. And then Ignite happens in November, and then they release the developer APIs for that. They're the first versions or whatever.
Right.
In other words, the Microsoft Graph makes sense when you have APIs that a third party can use to access this in their own solutions. These AI things make sense, for Windows UIs and Microsoft 365 app UIs, but honestly, you want to give third-party developers the ability to link into this stuff too. This is how Adobe might get into it, by the way. It's how Adobe might use it for something else of their own creation, although Adobe seems to be going down their own path. But but whatever. I mean, so I don't know anything about this event other than what I've said. I'm not revealing anything. I'm not trying not to reveal anything. I don't know. But I do think that this AI event will have some element of the future, to your point. And I wouldn't be surprised if the implementation of those futures starts with some developer stuff at Ignite in November. Just guess.
Sure. Yeah, we need them. Developers are useful for some things.
Yes, well, until AI takes the job.
As long as they're over 40, that's all I care about.
Thank you. I didn't want to point that out. I thought it was obvious, but yeah, you're right. I wish I had the energy of a 21-year-old.
Youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. IDC, like Gartner, weighs in every quarter with their estimates of PC sales, PC market share, all that kind of stuff. And for some reason, maybe because the future rarely goes the way IDC says it's going to go, they also talk about the future, right? They've the rich history of predicting the future incorrectly. Maybe someone
Thanks for setting up this factoid perfectly.
Yeah. Well, no, but then, by the way, they talk to all these companies and everything, but this is the company that predicted the year that Windows Phone was going to overtake the iPhone, for example.
Right.
God.
So with that little asterisk in place, they've had to revise their estimates for this year because and this was not just them. To be fair to IDC, everyone thought by the end of this year, this rebound, this post-pandemic rebound would occur, and it is not happening. Lenovo.
But we had a decline in PC sales before the pandemic too.
We had a 7-year drought of steady decline. Yep. The best year the PC market ever had was in 2011. They sold 344 million units. After that, 7 straight years of decline.
Wow.
Rescued by the pandemic, sort of, but people forget this. 2019, it actually was a tiny bit of growth. It is sort of reverse plateaued, if you will. 2 years went gangbusters.
What drives it, do you think? Is it a new version of Windows?
Okay, so 2011. So
I mean, obviously the pandemic's an outlier. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, forget the pandemic. But what drove what happened before? A couple things, right? iPhone happened in 2007. The iPad happened in 2010. The iPhone was not available everywhere in the world in 2007. People forget this. It was only available in the US and only on AT&T, right?
Right.
What happened over many years, it wasn't 3-5 years, it was many years, was Apple brought the iPhone to many, many markets, many, many carriers. This is something that happened over time. This is how...
It wasn't really to the iPhone 4 that I think that iPhone really started to become a dominant platform.
iPhone 4 was, I think, the first version on Verizon, for example. Yep. So even within the United States, it was a while before we started.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the trailing factor, I think, this push to mobile and this notion that a PC, which in 2005, 2010, whatever, was where most people did everything related to personal computing, became this device that they only used for work-related productivity tasks that required a big screen and a keyboard. They were doing email, they were doing browsing, they were doing gaming, they were doing whatever, social media on these mobile devices, right? And over time, the whole world filled up. Now everyone has a phone, even in third world nations. There are people with smartphones, basically, or low-end smartphones. There are people growing up now who will never use a PC because they can do everything, microtransactions, whatever, on these other devices. So I think that, I don't think. One of the things I said during this time period was like, I'm going to be curious where this levels out, because people talk about the post-PC world and what they think is apocalypse, it's going away. And that's not what that means. Even Steve Jobs probably would have admitted to this. There are always going to be PCs. The question is how many PCs, right?
Right.
The question is going to be what percentage.
Well, inevitably, it's always more.
Yeah. What we found, and I'd have to go look at I'm not going to be able to find the graph now, but if you look at the graph of how terrible things were for a while, it started in 2019. It went huge. 2021 was the best year the PC business has ever seen, except for 2010 through 2012. Right. Because of the pandemic. They literally sold everything they could sell. There was nothing left. There were component shortages. They couldn't catch up with demand. They bought anything. People were buying Chromebooks. It looks like a computer.
They just needed something that worked.
Right. I got to work. I'm home. I'm stuck. I can't go outside. I can't talk to anybody. I got to use, I need a computer. Right. So this kind of becomes the question again. And if IDC is right, and by the way, Lenovo, HP have both said very similar things. Small rebound in 2024. So we're going to level off again, and we'll see what that looks like. We'll see, where we are, but you have to look to future growth. Like, where's the future growth going to come from? And I got to say, 2024 to 25, there's a couple big things happening, guys. One of them is Windows 10 is going out of support, and that's going to, it's right. And that's going to trigger a commercial PC upgrade cycle. And that's going to be very interesting. That's going to help the market.
I would push back and say it's not that unlikely they're going to extend that. The amount of companies committed to 10 is huge. Some are going to pay for the extended support, and some are just not.
You are 100% correct based on history and facts, but I'm going to say, I don't know.
We'll never let that get in the way.
I don't know why that has to work its way into this argument. We'll see. But AI is the other one, right? And now Lenovo, if you go back and look at their earnings announcement from this past quarter, Their PC business is still the biggest part of their business. Like Apple, they try not to be a one product company, right? So they have this other stuff going on. Those things have seen, whatever those things are, I don't even care, but they've seen, enormous growth. They're doing fine. They're keeping the company in better shape than it would have been otherwise. But they look to the future, and they can't talk too specifically about it, right? But AI is going to drive these future workloads and future upgrade cycles.
Well, and I really see it as an alternative user interface, right? That just another way to get work done. You're just describing it rather than figuring out how the mouse works, figuring out how the toolbar works.
The thing is,
just describe what your intended goal is.
This hasn't always worked out. I will point people to Windows 8 and the new form factors that arrive with that, new hardware platforms like Windows RT, which ran on NVIDIA ARM hardware.
Yep.
And let me just look at the chart. Let's see, how did the thing, that's when the downturn started. Yeah, so that could be coincidental, but it's possible that Windows 8 also played a factor. That was a very disliked version of Windows. People, were not fans. I had normal people that I knew who bought new computers, not technical, and said, so how do I put Windows 7 on this thing? I was like, oh, you don't. I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, but it's like, you got to be kidding me. Now, over time, they fixed it, right? I mean, Windows 8.1.1 or whatever it was called, eventually they got it back. There was a start menu, start button, start taskbar, rather, desktop
widgets and slide outs and every kind of option.
We got there, and then Windows 10. But we'll see. So I would say this combination of factors suggests that we've hit rock bottom, I guess, this year, and we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
So that's Windows.
Mm-hmm.
It was like
time for a little M365.
An hour and 40 minutes on Windows.
It is Windows Weekly. I mean,
There you go. Fair enough. All right. Yep. We didn't talk about this last week. I don't remember the timing of this, but Dropbox, which is a third-party online storage service, announced that they were getting rid of their unlimited cloud storage plan.
Wow.
I think this is tied to the same thing that,
for the same reason,
Pixel Pass thing that no one knows anything about, or Netflix prices. The prices for the stuff it's just expensive for them. People were abusing it, which is silly. What do you think people were going to do with unlimited storage? Of course, they're going to put all their movie rips on there, like, but whatever. Right. But you go back and forth on this kind of thing. It's like unlimited wireless access to your carrier, right? What do you really use? Does anyone need unlimited? Really? We all have different needs.
Oh, and they all come with asterisks anyway.
That's right.
It's like when we say unlimited, we mean 2 terabytes. And after that, we're coming for you.
Oh, and if you're T-Mobile, you have 18 tiers that all have the word unlimited in their names, and they all have different kinds of storage.
They all have a list of limits.
Exactly. So Microsoft, I didn't actually know they did this, but OneDrive for Business Plan 2 was their unlimited storage plan, and it is going away. So this is something you would add to a Microsoft 365 commercial account. I think I'm right when I say all Microsoft 365 accounts on the commercial side get 1 terabyte of OneDrive storage. Right. I believe that's true. And now you can just subscribe to OneDrive for Business Plan 1, which has been there too. It's just as a standalone service for $5 per month for storage. Now you can get, they don't call it Microsoft 365, but it's OneDrive for Business, just OneDrive for Business. So you're not even using Microsoft apps anymore, web or otherwise. I don't know what they do for paid storage upgrades. Microsoft has gotten a little bit better about this on the consumer side. They used to not have anything, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
but now they pitch it relentlessly, especially if you're close to that 100 meg or 100 gig limit.
I am within 100 gigs of my 1 terabyte on my primary account over there because of all my.
Are you waiting to get pitched? Like, you kind of should fill it up to see if it says stuff. Like, you're already spending. You've got a terabyte. How mean are they to the spenders?
There's a tip in here somewhere, or an idea maybe, which is that I pay for Microsoft 365 Family, which means I have 6 accounts that each have 1 terabyte of use of storage, and some of those or most of those are used by people, right? But I think at least one's free, and I wonder if I could use that to archive stuff too, and
no kidding,
lower the impact of my primary. I'll look into that. But anywho, Google does a better job with this, for that's worth. If you are a Google Drive customer, I can't speak to the quality of the service, but you can get a 2 terabyte tier. I don't remember where it goes from there, but they have various tiers. It's much simpler than I think on the Microsoft side.
Yeah, pricing is
much better, I should say. And speaking of Google, remember back in the day when we were talking about AI and how it was going to cost a lot of money, and you know, Richard and I think both had heard different numbers from people, or actually the same number, I should say. And then they finally came out and said, "Look, Microsoft 365 Copilot is going to cost $30 per user per month on top of whatever you're paying for the underlying account."
Right.
And a lot of people were like, "Oh, And look, we can have the conversation. We had the conversation.
You had a nice stock price at the bump at the time.
Yep. Because as Richard, I think, correctly explained at the time, this actually makes sense. I mean, it sounds like it doesn't, from my standpoint as an individual, I'm like, what are you talking about? $30 per month? I don't,
$1 a day for performance improvement.
Yeah. Well, or you allow one person to do the job of two, and you're spending $30 a month and not $100,000 a year or whatever, right? Whatever
you're not wrong.
So that's the math there. Not surprisingly, people are like, oh, coincidentally, no, it costs them the same too. Google, which had announced at Google I/O back in May that their generative AI service for Workspace, which is their version of Microsoft 365, this week announced that it will cost, wait for it, $30 per user per month on top of the.
So Microsoft has anchored the price that everybody has to run to now.
Now, I know the cynical will say, oh, Google priced app store fees just like iTunes. This is what they do. It's like, this is what it costs. AI is expensive. These people aren't gouging anybody. AI is expensive. So,
yeah,
it takes a lot.
It is weird that it's exactly the same price as Microsoft.
I think you're going to see a lot more of that, right? They've anchored in a place where nothing bad happened, so now they're
it's a safe number now, and now others that want to do the same can charge the same, right?
Probably they're not more than they thought they would get.
Is that kind of really backhanded collusion? I mean, you're not supposed to set prices, but you're allowed, I guess, to look at the competition's price and set yours accordingly, I guess.
But we can't prove they did that, right? I mean,
right.
I believe that this is the cost. This is where it kind of makes sense for them. I think it really is.
I'm sure there's a spreadsheet somewhere where they say, see, it all adds up to $29.97.
Well, certainly they've been staring at the number of users saying, are we going to get there for the costs?
That's the other thing. I mean, it's a supply-demand question. Maybe it costs you $30 to make it, but are people going to pay $30 to use it?
I don't know off the top of my head, and I suspect no one does, but maybe someone could look it up. How many paid seats there are for Microsoft 365 commercial? I want to say it's in the 100-something thousand range, or 100-something million range, rather. Sorry.
Yeah, something like that.
100 and whatever million. There are 10 million users paying to use Workspace. 10 million?
That's not a huge number.
Small.
Yeah.
No, it's not a big number.
Yeah.
If anything,
we use it. We're more on the 10.
Yeah, I do too. No, honestly, it works great.
Yeah.
That's lower than I would have
I'm not paying anybody for anybody to use Duet. They're $30 a month.
No. But I think this speaks to that part of the market, which is new businesses, small businesses, startups.
If it did something specifically that our business needs, I might do that. For instance. We are using Claude, which is Anthropic's AI, and I don't know what we pay for it, but to do show notes for a podcast. And Anthony Nielsen, who is our AI genius, has tuned the prompt so that it does really good show notes.
I keep ruining Richard's end of book thing, but Richard will talk about this as well because he has other podcasts.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So, and for me, $30 for one person, in the company who does this, or even if all the editors did it, $150 a month, that's worth it. Right. That is worth it.
Right. So you don't have to get very much benefit. It's $1 a day.
Right.
Yep.
The thing is,
if it leads you to one shortcut, if it takes one thing off your plate, anything like that.
But there's also this intersection of the loss of interest in using ChatGPT for kind of general purpose stuff.
No, but but now you're paying for it for the things you need it for, right? It's the right tool for the job.
Get away from the existential conversations with software and into real.
What'll it do that I need done?
Yeah.
And is it cheaper than a human?
PowerPoint look better.
Yeah, and it's less expensive.
Spreadsheet setup.
I would say tied to this is this notion of the other side of the coin, which is the consumer side. And will ad-supported Bing chat or whatever make any sense? Will ChatGPT or DALL-E, which I think both have, or at least one of them has like a paid tier, will those things ever make sense as businesses? Or will they have to be sort of subsidized somehow by the other things that company is doing? I don't know. I don't.
Battle.
It's going to be a while before AI is inexpensive enough to make sense as a
and at the same time, we're in this race to figure out if the amount of infrastructure they've dedicated to making this thing work makes sense.
That's right.
Wouldn't be surprised if stuff gets turned off because it's just a lost opportunity cost.
And by the way,
purposing it as something else.
There are theories, what might call them conspiracy theories, that Microsoft is doing that in some places with Xbox Cloud Gaming, right?
Yeah.
A service that does not make money. It just uses a trailer service for games, basically.
Right.
Maybe we should turn that off. And people have seen, we can't say that that's what they did, but people have seen things they weren't seeing a year ago, which is, how come this thing's telling me it won't work? Please try again later.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. And you know what? I should have looked up these numbers. I apologize, but NVIDIA announced their revenues the other day, and you don't see these kind of figures much. Their profits went up 843%. That's no big deal. We see that sometimes at Amazon, plus or minus, because of the nature of that business.
Sure.
But their revenues went up 101%, which means they doubled, and you don't see that like ever. So NVIDIA, if we just go by the earnings of the most recent quarter, is now the biggest hardware company on earth. Now, before anyone says anything, I know that's not true, but by revenues, it is bigger than Intel, bigger than AMD, bigger than Qualcomm.
And really for making one set of chips.
And by making one set of chips that they did not plan to make, but rather they were a tiny little graphics card company for PCs. And what an interesting coincidence. These GPUs work really well for AI, and now the whole world needs us.
Yeah, I don't know
what
if they
a
were
wonderful
ever
thing to fall into.
They were always a big player in the space,
but they were hundreds of millions of dollars.
Headed.
This is they were big. They were one of two players in that space for sure. They were big, but here let's put this in perspective. Gaming, which is now its second biggest business, was 2.5 billion in revenues in the quarter.
Wow.
Data center, 10.32. That business is up 171% year over year. I can't do the math on that. What is that? 3.5% almost, or whatever. Or I think it's actually, that is the math. So yeah, there you go. I mean, they would have been a $3 billion company. Their other businesses are in the hundreds of millions range. So call the rest of the company 3 billion. Their data center business, the AI business, in other words, really, right, is three times the size of everything else they do.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Combined. Yep, big. So that's impressive. Because I saw that now. I get used to big numbers. So you report like big tech earnings. You're like, yeah, whatever. It's whatever billion. It's
billion
this billion
here, billion there.
And I was like, maybe they're the third biggest. No, they're the biggest.
Interesting.
Like,
And with a market cap to match, right?
Crazy. Yeah, I know. Well, they tried to buy ARM, remember? What kind of a monopoly might that have turned into?
The kind the FCTC pays attention to.
Exactly, and they squashed it.
Had to go the way, yeah.
Yep. Whew. All right, where are we? Here's something I had hoped to see in a headline, and it's not what I wanted, but it was close, which is Edge is deprecating features. Yay.
Oh, nice.
But they're good features.
Wait a minute. It's brand new. How can you deprecate? What?
It's not that new anymore. It's been a few years.
Yeah, we forget about this, but
time passes.
Microsoft Edge is a product like Teams that I think has been kind of bloated with features, right? And what we forget is the original vision for Edge was that it would have these unique features that were not available in other browsers. And some of them were honestly really cool, really good, Now, granted, every one of these I'm about to name is something I wrote about only for the book and used only at that time because I don't have a need for this stuff. But I feel like some people do have a need for this stuff, and I feel bad that they won't get it now. And I will admit that probably no one even knew this stuff existed. This is the third example of that. So Edge had the following feature, or has today the following features, and these are all going away. Math solver, picture dictionary, citations, grammar tools, and kids mode. Yep.
I remember kids mode.
Well, the one that always kind of struck me, and God, I got to run Edge to look at it. I hate doing that. You're welcome, everybody. Is the grammar tools one, right? And so there's also features that that are still going to be there that people kind of don't know about, like read aloud, right? So you'd have to, I'm on the wrong page to do this, but let me find a page where I can read an article actually. So if you go to like reading mode in Edge, which by the way, another great feature, that Chrome sort of has, but it's really about reading mode plus ads. Right. In addition to reading something aloud, you got all these neat extra tools. Oh, you do. I'm sorry, they're still there. You can there's language translation in there, right? There's all these kind of cool. Oh, I'm reading this voice ops, reading aloud, all that stuff. So this stuff was all in there, and you could as you were reading, you could have the grammar tools would do things like color underline all the nouns in purple and all the verbs in red or whatever whatever colors you wanted, like that kind of stuff. Like people who had maybe dyslexia or reading disabilities of whatever kind, or were just learning to read, maybe learning to read in a certain language. Some of these were really valuable. Picture Dictionary was goofy. Picture Dictionary was very, was very odd to even find it, but in a reading view, you might come across a word where there was a little picture above it. And if you hovered over it, it would define the word, which is like, so telephone was one I could get to work. I know.
What is a telephone? How does electricity work?
But I give them credit for trying with this stuff. The stuff they've added, the other stuff, the bulky blah 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 stuff. I've probably said this before, but there is a model which I know they'll never use, and there are probably good reasons for it. That I think Visual Studio has, if not perfected, at least shown the way on, which is you create this thing that is thin and light and has certain built-in capabilities, and then you let people build onto it using literally something called extensions, and you create this customized version of the product that's exactly the version you need. So maybe you're a C# developer, you get all that stuff. If you're a web developer, a lot of that's built in, but you can download additional stuff. If you're a Flutter developer, you get Flutter and Dart, and maybe some other extensions that help you refactor code or whatever it might be. It's kind of amazing, and that is what Edge should be, right? Yeah. It should be that thin, light browser they promised. They listen. There's all kinds of ways to advertise. When you first run, here's the marketplace where you can choose, like, are you a productivity worker? Are you a gamer? Are you whatever? And then you can get those features. And if you don't want them, you don't have them, and they're not blogging up the UI, and they're not taking up resources.
Chance, right? They were gonna let us control our digital effluent. There was
now it's all effluent. It's all
possibility.
Yeah.
And then they went down that path because that effluent is just too valuable.
I know. And that's why they'll never not do it. But that's the thing. That's it, right? I mean, it's there for a reason. And this is, by the way, that we keep talking about Cory Doctorow. I don't know that we can talk about him enough. I follow him on Medium.
He's so great.
The guy is. Did
you hear him on Twit 2 weeks ago? He's
no,
fantastic.
not yet. I will. I'm going to listen.
Highly recommend it. Yeah.
So the thing he has gotten so right is obviously this. And certification thing, as I'll call it, on this family-friendly podcast.
Right.
But the reason it's so right is that you can apply it to you can look at anything that you use and apply it, and it's like, yep, every single time. You get locked into something. Could be a TV streaming service, could be a office productivity app, it could be an operating system, whatever it is. And it's cheap or free in the beginning. You get hooked on it. Maybe you need extra features, maybe you're paying for it now. And they just keep making it worse and worse. And what you do is you look at, like, what are they doing here? Is this for me or is it for them? And when the answer is it's for them,
it's always for them.
Then it's certified, right? And it's exactly right. You could see it everywhere. Mm-hmm. And Edge is absolutely in this category. Windows 11 is, right? Why would there be crapware links in the start menu? Is it because some people like to discover new apps? No, it's because those apps are paying Microsoft.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with that.
Well, and they never made us the offer. Like, the offer was, hey, part of your M365 offering with this stipend, we're going to manage Edge for you. We're going to keep all this stuff under control. You're going to see where folks are going. You're going to see the effluent they're producing. You can choose what to do with it. Like, empower a family. Like, they had all of the ingredients to go the other way. Hey, it's $5 a month. And we'll clean this up for you.
There's a short-term gain versus long-term losing of customers calculus that's not occurring.
Well, do you really want to be grouped in with these companies that are all being scrutinized?
How many times
turning their users into a product?
How many times do you want Windows 11 or Edge, Windows 11 and or Edge, to be compared to malware? I mean, at what point does someone say? At what point does Satya Nadella come down and say, "Stop"?
Well, and
what are you doing?
this is the same mocking we had of Google with the do no evil.
Yeah. And
right?
of Gmail man scanning your emails.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, they don't do now. Thanks, Microsoft.
But you could have been the kinder, gentler tech giant, and then you just became like everyone else. Like
it's too bad. They really did have a moral authority there for a while. At least they appeared to. And it's gone. It's gone. So it's too bad.
Without even trying in the alternative. Like, at least if you had tried to make a subscription model around this.
I would submit that
they still could.
You can position yourself as the moral alternative and not actually be. Look at Apple, right? Sure. You can look like.
Oh yeah, no, I've made this case for years. They market their piousness very well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the problem with any faith is that you have to believe without having any evidence that what they're saying is true. I mean, and it's Apple. Microsoft was always Microsoft in the Satya Nadella era, I'll call it, was always a better company than Apple. Sure. But at now, they're shooting for it. They're doing everything they can to reverse it. And
you're just sacrificing the high ground, and for what?
I don't know. We asked Chris Capicella about this a couple of years ago. I think why don't you just provide a subscription service, a tack on to Microsoft 365 if you want, that you will remove the crap from Windows, and I'll pay you $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever it is. And he's like, well, that would be an implicit admission that what we were doing is bad. I'm like, no, this is what everyone does. I pay Netflix extra not to have ads.
Yep.
These are just options, Yeah.
Give us the options.
Kindle with, what do you call it? Special, when you buy a Kindle, you get ads, but you can also pay them some
additional fee and it goes away.
No ads. It's an option.
What's YouTube Red or YouTube Premium? Like, they're all the same things. It's like, hey, is this noise bothering you? Bring out your credit card. We'll solve it.
Right. Yeah. So they've resisted this. Maybe it's hard to put a dollar amount on this. I don't know, but I don't feel like they get much out of these interruptions. And I feel like they're starting to lose people. And this is just an opinion. I guess I don't have any facts.
We've also got the capitalist model that says if somebody builds a better mousetrap, we'll go there. And it's just none of them are. So there's nowhere to go. It's crapware in all directions.
My wife and I walk for 40 minutes every morning, and I broached this general topic. I'm just going to call it the Cory Doctorow world, or whatever, the intrudification thing, and how it applies to everything. And I said, there's a series of articles I could write that fall. And I'm like, let me just get through this in 10 minutes. And we got home and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was not even done. I'm like, because it goes in so many different directions. It's everything from people are getting tired of paying for subscription fees. Is there some version of this?
Yeah.
Where I had like a cloud of my own, right? Where I have, in my case, like 2 homes, and I keep a NAS in each one of them, and they're syncing up. And my phones are backing up to them. Could I avoid all these people, these companies? I mean, I'm not ready to do that. And I'm not saying yes, but I'm saying there's a conversation to be had there. And you could apply this to music, to videos, to games, it goes on and on and on.
And then we've created a great incentive for them to make it just crappier and crappier and crappier until you pay them.
Right. Well, okay. I don't know. I'm sorry. This is a big topic, and it's
not like you're ranting or anything. Goodness.
Well, I listen, this stuff, this impacts us all on some level. It just does,
Yeah.
Everything is like this. I go to a particular healthcare network in Pennsylvania. They're fantastic. My insurance covers it. When I go to the lab, it's their lab, same company. They don't cover that, which we found out after we went to the lab. Are you kidding me? No, we're not kidding. Insurance is the clown car stupidity when it comes to this stuff. I mean, it's so anyway, it's everything.
I've always been staggered. Like, we have one car insurance company in BC. They have to insure everybody. You have to buy from them.
What?
But because they're government.
Oh, it's the government. Okay.
Yeah. But the best thing of all is, like, I've been through it enough times now. Like, I get into an accident in the US and I watch people lose their mind.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God.
We have to exchange.
What percentage of accidents in the US, like serious, horrible accidents, have involved some conversation about, don't tell my insurance company, I'll just pay for this.
Yeah.
I bet you it's.
And also, like, I need to call a lawyer before I talk to my insurance company.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm sitting in a system where, like, every time it's like, if it's my fault, they're going to tell me and we're going to make a deal.
Yeah.
I've always
And if it's your
fantasized
fault,
about it.
I'm never going to hear about this again.
I was driving down the road. It happens all the time in Northern California. The gardeners don't tie their tools down, and a rake was in the road.
Yeah, they was flying off. Yep.
It flew off. I hit it.
Sure.
Insurance company said, well, you should have seen it. I said, it came out of nowhere.
I did see it.
I saw it, but it was too late.
It was a javelin coming. I saw it go through my windshield.
Well, you should have avoided hitting that. I tried, believe me.
Yeah, my superhuman reflexes.
Yeah, so they didn't pay for
years
it.
of video games.
It's why people have dash cams in the U.S. so that we can prove to our insurance company it
not
wasn't
just in the
our
U.S.
fault.
I saw a bunch of those.
Russia has them like crazy.
Last trip, yeah.
Well, the fact that you're emulating the Russians is a sign you're on the wrong path.
So you don't have those in BC, huh? I didn't realize.
I know I have a dash cam on my car, and the only thing I've done with it so far is given away the SD card with the person in front of me's accident.
Oh, that's nice of you. That's
hey, here you go. Here you have a copy of your accident from third person perspective. Have a great time.
So, I mean, obviously you have national health, but I didn't realize you had.
Well.
So, what is it? National or is it
basically
it's province-wide?
It's provincial.
Provincial car insurance. How about home insurance, fire insurance?
No, that's not.
That's weird that they nationalized or provincialized car insurance of all things.
Well, because it was required.
I get it. It's required
There's
here
plenty
too.
of people that argue against it and say we'd be better elsewhere, and then you actually look elsewhere and go, it doesn't look better.
Well, I mean, we have this problem here in Northern California where we are in a red flag warning today. The air quality is 140 because I don't know if there's a fire, but it's not good.
There must be smoke somewhere.
Somewhere there's smoke, and and that we have 40-mile-an-hour winds and high 90 temperatures, and of course we buy our own fire insurance, and it's getting to the point where insurers won't sell you insurance.
You just can't sell it because it can't make any sense. Right?
They did nationalize
flood insurance on the floodplain.
FEMA nationalized earthquake insurance.
Yeah.
So, because they had to, because no insurer, no private insurer would issue it.
Doesn't work. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's an interesting dynamic when it's like this is mandated, so it has to be provided to everyone.
Right.
That
makes sense.
A social construct.
Yeah. Okay, Paul. I'm sorry. You can talk about Xbox or something. It's okay.
I put us down this path. This is my fault.
Your fault.
Just a couple of more browser-related things because these just happen to happen this week. Firefox 117 is out. A couple of new features, but kind of separate off to the side of this is they have something called Firefox Relay, which is that kind of private email service where emails are redirected and kind of masks, where things are coming from, et cetera, et cetera. So if you are a Firefox user, especially, but even if you aren't, Firefox is also trying not to, or Mozilla's also trying not to be like the one product company. They've tried various services. There's a premium version you can get for 99 cents a month. So I don't anticipate using it or anything like that, but it, something to look at. And then I wrote the greatest headline ever written for Vivaldi, which is Vivaldi refactored its Chromium web browser, and you're never going to believe what happened next. My wife told me that long titles are good for SEO, so I went to town on that. But the basic idea here is that they looked at a lot of people that use Vivaldi had complained about the performance of various aspects of the browser, especially opening new windows. They wrote a new kind of a React. They use React for a lot of the UI, I guess. Kind of a React based kind of new. I don't know what to call it. It's called Portal Windows. This is a new, more efficient way to run code. So when you're opening windows and so forth, so a lot less RAM, a lot less CPU, better performance. It's supposed to be pretty fantastic. I don't know that this is enough to get someone to switch to Vivaldi per se, and I don't know how to compare to the performance of this thing to other Chromium-based browsers on desktop, but depending on what you're doing, they're saying 37 to 64% improvement in speed. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah,
those are Apple numbers.
Big numbers.
Apple numbers. So something to look at. Remember, in the kind of family of Chromium-based browsers out in the world, the one that Vivaldi is the one that is the super personalized version. They also have mail and whatever else. Is it newsfeed? I think like an RSS feeder, components, calendar, probably. It's a big, busy browser. You can customize it however you want, but I find it a little busy. But it does all the good Chromium stuff that you want. And if you're into personalization, it's probably a good choice.
Cool.
I am into more of a minimalistic type thing, but everybody does.
Vivaldi is the opposite of minimal, boy.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. On the UI standpoint, I would say Brave and Vivaldi on the opposite ends of that spectrum.
Yeah. Well, Brave has a lot of cruft in it too.
Yeah, but it's easily removed,
Right.
and they tend to adopt these kind of like modern UI features way late, if ever.
Right.
Mhm.
Have you
in fact,
settled on Brave now? This is like finally.
Oh yeah, I've been using it for over a year now.
Okay.
Yep, straight up.
I'm still a Firefox guy because I believe in diversity.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's the one I wouldn't try to talk you out of.
Yeah, I love
But people are like,
Firefox.
actually, use Chrome. Chrome's fine. I'm like, yeah, is it?
Is it?
No.
Is it really?
No. In fact, I'm nervous about all Chromium browsers because of this new Google Topics thing. I just don't know.
None of them are doing it.
They're not going to.
They're all stripping it out.
Good.
No, there hasn't been one. Well, except for Microsoft hasn't said anything. But
We don't know Edge. Yeah.
Opera, Vivaldi,
Brave.
and Brave have all said
Good.
we're not doing it.
Good. I am ready. I don't know about you. Well, I'm ready for brown liquor. But before, and I noticed you started early, Richard. But I think.
You're not wrong.
I think
It's late now.
It's late. I know. It's not early.
Right.
Is it?
Oh, it's really late for
late.
them. It must be 10,
Yeah.
almost
In fact,
10:30.
Let's
now, right?
hustle along
Yeah.
here and get that Xbox segment under our belt.
I'm not doing that for Richard. We're going to go slow. No, that's
Slow down.
just
We're going for a new record in the length of this show.
Xbox head Phil Spencer, who's actually titled now as Microsoft Gaming CEO. Phil Spencer spoke
He's a
with
CEO.
Eurogamer.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow. They really are
is
just making up titles up there these days, aren't they?
Now we have CEO of business units inside of business units, sir. It doesn't matter. Who cares? So he gave a really good interview with Eurogamer. I really recommend anyone who cares about Xbox read this. It's a really good thing. I'm just going to pull out two parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
One is that he said, because Microsoft recently had to raise the price on Xbox, and that's kind of across the board, right? Hardware in certain markets, not all markets. I think in the United States they actually haven't raised the price of consoles yet, but the services are all going up and all that kind of stuff. And his basic take on this is these prices are never coming down again. This is not a inflation era thing that we reverse. Like this is forever. So sorry. But he also talked about the mid-season refresh issue, right? So if you think about this generation of Xbox consoles compared to the last, the original Xbox One was later followed up by something called the Xbox One S, which was probably cost reduced, but it was size reduced as well. It was a beautiful machine. It was it looked like an Apple product. It was really nice, white, right? And then there was an Xbox One X, which was black and also smaller still, I believe, really elegant looking thing. And each of these had improvements over the predecessor, not just size and cost, but just capabilities. And for the Xbox Series X and S, they released two consoles together for the first time. The S has half the storage, or did in the beginning, 512 versus a terabyte. But the big thing was graphical capabilities and thus performance. And I don't remember the exact details there, but the way they would describe this very vaguely, and it hasn't proven to be 100% correct, was that you could do 1440p at 60 frames per second on the S and 4K or 60 frames per second, right? And or on the X. And I think what people wanted was for the Series X to be the PlayStation 5 killer, and I don't get that. So in my mind, what they need to do, I don't know if they would call it a Z or something, but basically make a version of the X with double the storage again, right? We need to go up to 2 terabytes. It's overdue because of all the games are huge, right?
Yeah.
But also guarantee 4K at 60 at least, and a lot of games at 120, at 4K. And he is not interested in that at all. And I'm surprised by this.
And I wonder if it's just hardware costs. Like it gets expensive to push that many frames down the wire.
It could, and tied to this, I think these things, frankly, aren't selling very well, not compared to Sony, right? And it may just be I
also wonder about how many people have displays with, HDMI 2 or DisplayPort 1.3, like can actually take on a 4K 60 FPS signal. Because if he knows that data and says, okay, we're only getting X many % of the market, how many of you have a TV that can do this?
This is the HoloLens argument. Until we have a big enough jump, we're not going to do it. But even I think this came up last week or 2 weeks ago. Even the 360, the Xbox 360,
the one they're closing the store on, that one,
yeah, had mid-season replacements, if you will. Cost reduced, yes, but they also added 1080 over time. It was 720 in the beginning, and
but it was also a standard that you could buy the screens on, right? Like 1080p, 60 FPS screens were readily available.
I just think there is an enthusiast market out there. I'm wrong. I mean, he knows more than I do. What am I? I'm going to argue with the guy that runs Xbox. Yeah,
well, and you've got a much stronger argument there, which is, shouldn't we be setting the high watermark? Shouldn't you be encouraged by those screens? Shouldn't those screen manufacturers be subsidizing this product? Like, I don't know the answer to there, but you know,
either. I feel strongly about taking a leadership position on this thing. And I know there's been a lot of bad news around Xbox, especially the stuff that's come out of the FTC hearings and so forth, where they basically had to come out and say, look, we're losing this race.
Yeah.
We're not going to win it
for a while.
There's no version.
I mean, I will throw the game angle at it too, which is that the cost of art for these high-end machines in the high resolutions is staggering. Yeah. Like, it just costs so much to produce these games. It's why they don't innovate in that game space. You're committing $100 to $200 million to develop a game you need to make $1 billion plus on.
I got a theory. I have a theory.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading the article, and his point is, how would having more mid-season replacement help creators or players? To me, it feels like, this is a direct quote, we are creating a ton of complexity for creators and players in something that used to be very simple. The difference between Microsoft and Sony is Microsoft makes PCs, right? So Microsoft may well think, Apple has this issue with iPad and Mac, may well think, no, we want two roads, a simple, clean, easy road. You want to play a game, you buy an Xbox. If you're a gamer, if he's
marketing that, that's not true. So I got just 2 points. The original Xbox was literally based on a PC. Yep. And one of the things they lost as they went to PowerPC and then to AMD, they just kind of lost the PC architecture. Could have made it like a PC, but with plug-in components, they could have improved the graphics and the processor.
They have that. That's the point, is they have that.
Well,
the market for a console is for people who don't want to screw around with that stuff.
Okay, but so back in the day, you would buy a console, and that for the entire life of its generation, it would not change from a technical perspective. Games would work on every version of the console, even if they were cost-reduced versions. There were no improvements, right?
Right.
One of the things with the Xbox 360, they improve things over time, and so you have games that can run in 1080p, not just in 720p. So that's like an improvement everyone gets to share. With the Xbox One, they had 3 different versions of it, and by the time we got to the X, we were getting into the 4K territory, not all the time, and not very 30 frames per second, whatever it was. But for people who did buy in at that time, maybe they upgraded from a 360, or they had the original one, and now they're like, yeah, now I'm going to get an X. You have these advantages that you get by doing that. With the Series X and X, they did it from the beginning. They're like, look, we're going to make 2 tiers. We're not going to do a better tier later. We're going to do 2 right now. But what happened was, now it's 3 years later, I think, right? About 3 years later. Everyone is targeting the S. Why would you even take the time to make a special version of the game for the X? It's harder to do that. And the market is tiny. Yeah. And that's what they kind of lost, because these two things sit side by side and are always in market together. You don't ever replace the little one. You just always have, it's always there. So that's what they all target. That's the volume.
And it represents the largest market. So that's what you build to. Yeah. It self-fulfills.
If this thing replaced the S 3 years down the line, which is what happened last time with the One, developers would have started targeting it, because that would have been the thing everyone was buying. Some people would have upgraded, some people would have stayed, and they could still play the same games. They wouldn't look as good. But look, this is just a debate. The truth is, no one really knows. They've experimented
in the
with
gaming
different
industry
ways.
itself. Once we got to this generation of machine, you couldn't make a game that fully utilized it.
I think these things should be componentized and should be a little bit more like PCs, where you could have the benefit of the PC to some degree.
But now you're even lowering the minimum bar.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Arguably, the thing to do is build exactly one. Like Sony got it right with the PS5. There's one.
Okay. I think we're going to get to this place eventually, really, with consoles, and then it'll go away because we don't need them anymore. But Sony, previous gen, did a Pro version of the PS4, right? That had better capabilities. Did that bifurcate the market or something? Maybe.
The game's built to the minimum. Just the Pro ran cooler and quieter.
Well, no, but it also could look better, right? That was, I think I'm not.
Yeah, and then now you're playing upscaling games and things like that. So let's face it, if you want a modular solution where you can maximize your experience, become part of the PC master race, man. Leave your consoles behind. Your controller works on the PC anyway.
I didn't mean to give you that in. I appreciate that you took it, but fair enough. Okay. Okay. And like I said, like I'm just talking. I'm just Phil's mentioned what he's doing. Who am I?
Yeah, no.
to question
I'd love to have access to demographics that he has access.
I'd give anything to look at this data.
Yeah.
And just to wrap this up, Baldur's Gate 3 has been, I don't know, when did that come out? This year, right?
Yeah, this year. Not that long ago.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so it is
hit.
Yeah.
Okay.
You haven't played it, Paul? Come on, everybody's playing.
No, I don't. This is not my kind of thing.
No, it's not.
Are there Germans? Are there Germans on this?
There's no Nazis, but they are aliens.
I should have said Nazi zombies. It is coming to Xbox Series X and S by the end of the year. So I don't know. I felt like they sort of said it was coming at some point. I thought that was what they had said originally. It's coming to PlayStation.
On the PC like a smart person.
It actually, because it's basically Dungeons and Dragons, and it's click, move, you turn based. You probably could play it on a console without too much. It's not, the combat is not.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see what the user interface adaptation looks like.
Yeah. I think it'd actually work on a console.
Well, it's coming out on PlayStation too, by the way. So
yeah, it's huge.
It's coming. Yeah, I'm sure.
I can't get into it. I keep trying.
That's why we need 2 terabyte drives.
Yeah. It is huge too.
Yeah, it's big. It's
very
big
open
game.
world.
And this is one of the, like I said, one of those themes throughout the show. Things that keep going up in price. Everything. Sony announced that it will be raising the price of its PlayStation Plus service. This is sort of analogous to Game Pass, and they're based depending on. No, they're all going up. So it's about 33 to 35%, depending on which tier, because they have an essential tier, an extra tier, a premium tier, etc. So that's the world we live in. Sorry, and that's it. I have an Xbox related thing in the back of the book as well. So
okay, so we're not done yet. But I do want to take a breather, because we're about to get into the back of the book.
I'm going to go crack the window here. I think the CO2 levels will get a little high.
Yeah, go ahead, open a window.
Yeah.
Richard looks a little drowsy.
Except I'm not going to open a window because my air quality index is now 154. So
yeah, the air in your office is better than the air outside.
It's creepy outside. It's got that feeling, They call it earthquake weather, but now I think it's more like wildfire weather. It's not good.
Yeah.
All right, go open a window. Paul, you do whatever it is that makes your breathing easier. And get yourself a CPAP. I don't care. But we will return in a moment. You're watching or listening, because you can do both windows. Likely Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. Back at the book time. Paul Thurrott is ready. Go ahead, Paul.
So 2 tips. One is that Microsoft, in partnership with Free Code Camp, is now offering something called the Foundational C# certification. It's 35 hours of C# training hosted on Microsoft Learn. It's free. So if you want to get going with the fundamentals of the C# programming language, you can look to that.
When are they going to have a Haskell foundational certificate? That's the one I want.
I think there's a Perl.
Perl, really? Is there?
It's certainly there's a Perl course.
Yep, it's a curse.
No, I think there is.
Much better word for it.
I believe there is.
Are people really learning Perl today?
Sure.
Wow.
Maybe. I don't know. Not me.
No.
I didn't say Perl. Did I say Perl?
You said Perl. You mean Python, probably. Python.
I probably mean Python.
Python, yeah.
Perl.
Perl kind of took a left turn at Perl 5 and turned into Rocket.
It's just like, you know what I meant.
You meant Python. I know.
Sometimes I say things that I'm like, that didn't sound right.
How's the digital decluttering going, by the way?
So that's been going great. But I wasn't going to talk about that per se, other than the fact that I've been busy archiving all my videos. I think I mentioned this last week, but actually, I should just look. What do I have today?
Paul's been going through his old hard drive and finding all sorts of classic, Microsoft. Yeah.
I found some stuff.
They don't mind that you release these. These are from Microsoft.
Not at all. So what's amazing is I have gotten I don't know what you call it. It's not a copyright strikes. It's basically a thing where it's just a note in the console. It says, hey, the owner of this copyright is exerting their rights to this video, but they don't care that you're using it all. If you go nuts, they're not going to restrict ads.
What it is you can't. Oh, they're not even demonetizing.
No, they don't care. They're like this. Every single one of them. It's like it's
just
fine.
To let you know we own this, but go ahead.
Yep, it's fine.
Interesting.
So that's all good.
Look at
there's a great video of me on a local newscast in 1996.
Are you a computer expert?
That's what it says.
Top story at 5: high-tech theft. Oh, wait a
Dun,
minute.
dun, dun. So I looked this story up. You can Google this. So in 1996, thieves were stealing Intel. It was actually Pentium CPUs and memory cards from Intel and selling them on the black market, whatever that means. They arrested this guy, but you could look this up today. There was a whole conspiracy behind this. There's like a big story behind this. It was actually turned into a big thing that I didn't know anything about.
And you were at the time, were you working in a bank, or were you by now?
I was right. I was a published author by this point. I don't remember how I got this little talking head gig. I also did some hand modeling in here. You'll see in a moment.
Oh, I got to see this. Wait a minute, let me skip ahead a little bit. That's good. Yeah, so there's the hand modeling.
Nothing of value whatsoever.
Look at a 486 DX2, baby.
This was all we had to show. They were like, I'm like, is this the newest thing we have? Like, this was already out of date by the time this show was on.
Why steal it? We asked Paul Thurrott, published author and computer expert, why people are stealing these chips. Mm-hmm. And what did Paul say? Here he is. Oh, look at you, Paul. You're so cute. They did some lighting on this thing. They brought in the lights.
Yep.
Wow.
That was one of the many things I pulled out of my little.
Was that it? That was that thing right there. Was it?
Yeah, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's just a stupid little video. But the point is, I now have over 225 videos. I'm probably going to have over 300. I would imagine by the time I'm done with uploading.
I gotta get this because I want this as the thumbnail for the episode.
Oh boy.
Paul Thurrott, computer expert.
Sure. Well,
why steal it? We asked Paul Thurrott.
In case you were wondering why I'm on this podcast, there it is.
It's proof. Channel 15.
I also have the one where I won a Neil Award at some point, and I refused to go to the award ceremony, so the CEO of Penton picked it up for me.
Yeah.
And he knows so little about me. He said that I was busy working at Microsoft and couldn't pick up the award.
Well, thank you for, wow.
It's not that prestigious of a journalism award. Oh, yes, it is, you dick. But whatever, it's okay. Anyway,
Paul's not here. He's busy working at Microsoft. He's assistant to Steve Ballmer.
Yeah, exactly. He's right.
Wow.
He's getting coffee for Steve.
Getting coffee for Steve. Wow.
Okay. Anyway,
is fun.
I'm sure he was a good guy.
I'm glad you're going through this stuff. This is really fun.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot of stuff in there. It's nice. Windows Phone fans will find a lot to cry over. A lot in there. And then the app pick is The Making of Karateka, which I mentioned, I don't know, a month or two ago. So this is that interactive documentary about the making of the game Karateka, which was the second game. What's his name? Jason, I forgot his name. What is
Romero.
No.
Carmack.
No. Geez, guys, come on. Jordan. Mechner.
Oh, Mechner, the Prince of Persia guy. Yeah.
Prince of Persia. That's right. So this guy has actually written a book about each of those games too. If you want to just read about them, those have been out for a little while. But what the interactive documentary means, there is literally an interactive documentary thing with a timeline and blah blah blah. But whatever. But from a game playing perspective, pixel perfect versions of the original games on different consoles, by the way, right, or different platforms. Prototypes of the game, including one called Death Bounce Rebounded, which was almost the game. It has new features for modern day, so you can save anywhere, rewind, select chapters.
Oh, this is on
director's
Xbox.
Commentary. It's on Xbox. But it's also
I've seen these. This is so cool because you're buying a game and a documentary about the game.
But it's actually multiple games. There's also a remastered version of the game, right, with different content and commentary.
I love this idea.
So $20. You can get it on Xbox. You can also get it on PC, PlayStation, or Nintendo Switch if you want. And there are more of these coming. This is the first in a series. And they're kind of hinting, they didn't say what it was, but this series of interactive documentaries, the second game, whatever, will ship before the end of the year. So sometime soon they're going to say what that is. We don't know yet. But the point of this is to bring back these classic games and to kind of interact with the people that made them. Right, which is really cool.
And you get to play.
Yes.
I love this idea. I think this is a really
incredible.
It's not just this too. There's other games, right? I've seen other games.
Not yet.
No, not yet. Oh, just maybe I saw the news that they were going to do some other ones.
Yeah, it will be.
What a great idea. I love that.
Yeah.
So can you look at the Xbox store? Is that where you would get it? Or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And
Nice.
if other platform, you can get it on Steam if you're a PC. What do you call it? PC Master Race, the PlayStation Store, whatever that's called, whatever the Nintendo has. God knows. Yeah.
Speaking of the Master Race, what's coming up on Runners Radio, Mr. Richard Campbell?
Paul already referred to this.
I know, I'm so sorry.
But published today was the show called Getting Ready for M365 Copilot with Carolina Katakura, who's a Finnish lady who leads a consulting firm that's helping companies get prepared. So she's been involved with early days of M365 Copilot. They're really still in the case study mode where they're only allowing access by large companies, I think, to sort of build up the narrative of good things they can do with it. But the big emphasis on this, there was the two aspects. And again, I think Paul mentioned this, which is helping you use the suite better. Because let's face it, there's way too many icons inside of M365. You can't learn them all. And the idea that I could say, hey, I need to achieve X and it'll give me a path to what apps to use is interesting. But the larger conversation was the indexing of your company, of having this machine learning model with access to all of your documents and all of the emails and chats and so forth that can sort of lift up what your company already knows. You just couldn't find it. And that leads to this issue of how much secret stuff your company has that's only protected because people can't find it. And now the tool's going to find it all.
Whether you wanted it found or not.
Exactly. And so this led to this whole data governance conversation about we need to start tagging for security and so forth. Because, if this tool works the way it's supposed to, it's going to surface all kinds of information. Maybe you're not quite prepared.
The D word occurred in the podcast, which I was sort of, like I said to you earlier, I was saying out loud, delve,
Yes.
Delve is a good word.
I made that reference a few times to this. How do we stay out of the uncanny valley, right? Where it's like, hey, let me show you how we've harnessed corporate surveillance for fun and profit.
Delve was like the dentist from Marathon Man,
Yeah.
He's like, let me know if this is a little too invasive.
Is it safe? Is it safe?
Is it safe?
Is it safe?
But they've made a few attempts to make the graph available to us in a useful way. And it hasn't gone well. And then part of me just looks at this as this is another way. But by making it goal-driven, where you're kind of describing what you want to achieve, and then the tool comes back and says, hey, let me show you how I can help you achieve that, maybe we can make it more acceptable. I don't know the answer to that. It was a fun conversation to have.
Is it safe? Now, is it whiskey is the other question.
That is a good question and an excellent one. And I'm following the tradition I seem to do when I'm in strange and faraway lands. And so being in Denmark means finding a Danish whiskey. And not that hard to do. The Danes do make a set of whiskeys, and the one I selected today is the Arrow whiskey. And let me just pull up my notes here.
Are we going to make a reference to the Windows Arrow?
It's translucent. Yeah.
Well, and I also had the experience where there was a Jean-Michel Jarre concert based in Denmark called Arrow.
Oh.
That was done out of Aalborg. But no, this is actually on the island of Arrow. It's on the island of Arrow, which is just to the southwest of Copenhagen. You have to take a ferry to Sobi to get there. A little farming community, essentially. And in the town of Aarhusskorbæk is the Arrow distillery, where they grow their own barley and malt it themselves. Like they're doing it the old Scottish method more than the Scots do anymore. I
love the bottle.
It's a beautiful little bottle. They kiln dry it with air power. So, the Danes are famous for their windmills. And so they use electric kilns to dry it. And then they have a 4-stage mash process, which is a little excessive. Most distilleries only do 3 stages, but they're maximizing the extraction from that. One of my favorite comments in their plans was the mash that's left over, which is typically used for animal feed. They call it Friday sweets because they make such small batches there that they typically finish a mash run on a Friday and ship that out to the animal feed. And apparently the cows really like it.
Oh, I bet they do. I bet there's no alcohol in it, is it?
Now they go through their fermentation process and they have their own yeast treatments and they raise it to be wort, and then they do a double distillation process, but they call it a closed loop model. So they use a large copper pot still for their low wine stage where they get to about 30%, and then it goes into a column coffee still, and they lift it up to about 88%, which most whiskey makers would call too high, like a very high level of distillation, but it makes quite a light spirit. They age, most of their whiskey is aged straight up in sherry casks, some PV or PX, some Oloroso, but they've also experimented with European oak, specifically Hungarian oak, and they grow a few oak trees on Arrow itself. So they've made a couple of special editions with new Danish oak. But typically you'll get sherry caskings. They come in around 55%. That little bottle that you like so much, that's a 500 ml bottle, not a 750.
No,
and it comes in at about 130 US.
That's a pocket size.
What?
So like many things Danish, it is small, but
you
expensive.
can't get it here, can you? I assume you can't.
No, and even tough to find in lots of parts of Denmark too. So I found a couple of places in Copenhagen that have it, but it's hard to come by.
Wow.
There are a few folks making whiskey here in Denmark, but it's small batches, which really appeals to me. But I thought the Arrow was a gorgeous bottle and a gorgeous story on a little island that most people have never heard of.
Well, see, now I have 2 reasons to go to Denmark.
There you go. Apparently they have a great whiskey tour. I have not taken it, but I think I'd like to take the ferry to Sobe and go down there and just take a look at this very artisanal approach to making whiskey.
Nice.
I'm just imagining the cows eating the Friday sweets.
They're Friday sweets.
They're so happy. They're just,
Sure.
this is tasty. This is
It's
the
very
best malts I've ever had.
Yeah.
Richard Campbell is in Copenhagen, and then you're going to go to New Zealand.
Netherlands next week. Then we'll probably do one from either the old house that we're just about moved out of or the new house that we're moved into. And then one in Australia, one in New Zealand.
Wow.
Another one in Perth. And then I'll be home for like 5 minutes.
He's a traveling man, ladies and gentlemen, our very own Richard Campbell. Runasradio.com for his podcasts, Run As Radio and .NET Rocks. You do .NET Rocks weekly or no?
Yep, we're into .NET Rocks out every week. And here at the Developer Fest, we've been recording some .NET Rocks in an Airstream. They have a converted Airstream trailer for us.
Oh, that's my podcast dream. I always wanted to drive around the country doing the show in an Airstream. That would be so cool.
I tell you, the acoustics in an Airstream, not awesome. A little tricky to work in.
Shiny aluminum.
Yeah, shiny, very reflective aluminum.
Yeah.
But we, using the D-Fines, doing our best to try and manage that.
Well, you sounded great today, and I thank you, even though you were in a tiny little Copenhagen box. You get to
IKEA house.
They're using the Airstream for karaoke right now, which is a plague foisted upon civilization. Sure. And so I was happy to be, back in a hotel meeting room with poor air quality.
Well, go have a breath of fresh air and a little Arrow whiskey.
Safe travels, man.
Yes, absolutely.
So far, so good.
Thank you, Richard. Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com. Do become a premium member. It's really worth it. THURROTT.com. He's also got a great book, 2 books, at leanpub.com. There's the Windows Everywhere book, which is kind of about the history of Windows through its development tools. And then, of course, the Field Guide to Windows 11, which includes Windows 10 built right in, just like Windows 11. All of that, you set the price, well worth buying. Leanpub.com. We do Windows Weekly from the beautiful Twit East Side Studios every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC. We'll be back next week. The good Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise and the fires don't hit us. So tune in and watch us do it live if you want the freshest version. If you're watching live at live.twit.tv or listening, we've got audio and video streams. Chat with us live at irc.twit.tv. That's open to all, and you only need a browser to access it, irc.twit.tv. And, of course, Club Twit members know they get the special access, the Discord behind the velvet rope where you can hang while you're listening to the show. After the fact, on-demand versions at twit.tv/WW. There's a YouTube channel. course, the best thing to do is subscribe in your favorite podcast player. Just search for Windows Weekly. We've been doing this now for how many years is it, Paul? 15? 16?
I think it's 16 this year. Right?
Holy cow.
17. Wow. 17.
Holy cow. So if the podcast player you're using does not know about Windows Weekly, slap it upside the head. It's probably too young. That would be the problem. We're not that young. We've been here for a while. PC experts, Richard Campbell and Paul Thurrott, have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time on Windows Weekly.
It's midweek, and you really want to know even more about the world of technology.
So you should check out Tech News Weekly, the show where we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news.
It's the biggest news. We talk with the people writing the stories that you're probably reading. We also talk between ourselves about the stories that are getting us even more excited about tech news this week.
So if you're excited, well, then join us. Head to twit.tv/TNW to subscribe.